This is with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
What is up, everybody? Hope you had a great weekend. Welcome to a special Monday trade deadline edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. I'm Andrew Paterson, along with Michael Remis at the WST Control Center. And we've got a big show today. We'll go well past the deadline in 1 hour from now, get all the latest reaction to the news from around the National Hockey League, discuss what is going on with the Winnipeg Jets, and probably talk about a hockey game tonight with the Jets looking to continue their strong play as of late, taking on the Ottawa Senators tonight at 6 o'clock. We've got a great lineup for today. We always love having Murat on the program. Murat's done some just wonderful work in the Athletic, teeing up what is a very intriguing trade deadline for Winnipeg Jet fans and, of course, people that follow the team. So Murat's going to jump on in about 10 minutes or so. And then, as Murat certainly will hopefully have a bunch of writing to do based on what the Jets do or don't do, our old pal Brandon Rewucki is going to come hang in from about 1:45 through the past the deadline, and we'll react in live time to anything that's happening in and around the league, and, of course, focus on what moves, if any, are made by Kevin Cheveldayoff and the Winnipeg Jets. Let's welcome in Michael Remis. But as we do that, once again, thanks to all of our sponsors, Not Autocorp, Boston Pizza Winnipeg, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Royal Sports, Breezy Bend, Cool Bet, and Aikens Lake. Remo, what's going on? How are you doing, man?
I'm feeling good. I've been preparing all weekend for this to make sure we have everything ready, everything is functional. We're going for a perfect show. No one's going to be muted. But we're also waiting for some trades. I mean, last night it was bumping. We had a number of deals, Taylor Hall, David Riddick. But today, I've been watching the TSN Trade Center show. They've been doing a lot of the Tradey Bunch. You ever get traded, Huss? You ever get traded?
No, I was made a free agent about 2 months ago, though. So
Yeah.
I did not quite get traded, although we've been working to find other playing opportunities in the game, if you will. Hey, just while we're doing that, Reem, fire out a tweet from the Sports Talk account, and I'll make sure to do that to let everyone know that we're live. I want to give a shout out to everyone that is joining us. Man, a great early start for everybody showing up today. Over 200 people right now in the first few minutes. That is great to see. Great to see our girl Taylor, Paul Carr, Tracy Okraniak. And there's Mitch, and I got to tell you, I'm with Mitch on this. He says, hoping Chevy can pull Alexiak out of Dallas. And I think right now, Reem, considering the moves that we've already seen, David Savard going off the board earlier on the weekend to the Tampa Bay Lightning, certainly from my perspective, that would sort of be a real nice way to see this thing end. Jamie Alexiak coming over, and if last night was his final game with the Dallas Stars, he certainly made it a memorable one. They did lose in a shootout, but an absolutely gorgeous goal, deking a number of guys to go in and tie the game up. And I think that highlight, as much as anything, probably if people were watching going into today, maybe got a little fired up that he might be a great addition on the Jet Blue line. Yeah,
you have to wonder where he would fit in. He's a big guy. He's got some offensive talent. He's played on some winning teams before. So bring him in. I mean, the question would be for the Jets. Seems like they're feeling pretty good about their team right now. Who comes out? Is it Tucker Poolman? Is it Logan Stanley? Seems like one of the two. To me, Logan Stanley, big guy. You have to wonder if they got to start giving him some extended opportunities now, maybe on the special teams, PK. He's really being, we've talked about this before, that they're putting him in a situation where he can succeed, playing against the other team's lesser competition, not really playing too many special teams. So you're going to need guys, I think, who can contribute in all areas in the playoffs. So who would come out if a guy like that would come in? But I think Alexiak would definitely bring an element to the Jets, that size, toughness, and maybe some offensive skill as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure, obviously, where the coaches are at. I'm going to have a window into Paul Maurice's mind or even Kevin Cheveldayoff. But I will tell you, from talking to a number of Jet fans and people over the course of the weekend through the Montreal game and yesterday, like the Logan Stanley stock is just getting higher and higher every game. And if you polled most Jet fans and said, listen, a new defenseman's coming in, who's coming out of the lineup, and this isn't really a slight on Tucker Poolman. I really like Tucker Poolman. We've talked about him plenty of times, and at times he's played at a very high level, including for my money, the best defenseman in the bubble in August for the Winnipeg Jets. But if it came down to those two, I think I'm leaning towards leaving Logan in the lineup.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it depends. Like, if you're going to start playing him and not sheltering him as much, yeah, leave him in. I mean, we know he's got a great shot. He's big. He's intimidating. We might see some of that. I know a lot of people want to see that tonight against the Ottawa Senators, especially Brady Tkachuk. So we'll see. But, I mean, Poolman, he's got more experience. You know, we all know the Winnipeg Jets, they're a union shop. It's last guy in, first guy out. So if you go by that, Poolman's been in the lineup longer. Maybe Stanley's the last guy in, and he would be the first guy to come out. We will have to wait and see. I mean, because you're kind of getting, you know, a more talented guy who also has the same size, and assuming Alexiak is the guy. But hey, if you imagine if you put a D pair of Alexiak and Stanley, those are two massive individuals on one blue line.
You know what? Maurice would love that too. Matt Lang. I think I like Stanley as our third pairing guy through the playoffs. He's shown really well. I'm not sure I'd want him on the ice versus McDavid in the first round. But yeah, listen, you know, that McDavid assignment is going to be a tough one for whoever gets it, and we've seen that so far. Although I will say this, I think the Jets in their last few games against the Oilers, even in those two losses, did a pretty darn good job of limiting overall opportunities. It's just that even one can make you pay when it comes from Connor McDavid. Remo, before we get to Murat and talk about what the Jets may or may not be up to and react to whatever happens before 2 o'clock, was some pretty significant deals on the weekend. Kyle Dubas not waiting to make a couple of aggressive moves. They get Big Save Dave out of Calgary for a third-round pick. I think that was a great move for Brad Treleving. They were looking to get something for David Riddick, and a pick, and not in this year's draft, but the following year's draft with more scouting. I think has some real value. But how about the Nick Foligno deal? I mean, really swinging for the fences. We've talked about the potential of seeing first-round picks move. It was that and more.
Yeah, sorry, we do have some breaking news, not a trade, but the Kings did sign Alex Iafallo to a 4-year, $16 million contract, so $4 million a year AAV. They thought they were maybe going to deal him, but they worked together, found a long-term deal, so he's been there for a while. But yeah, I'm not surprised, Toronto. I mean, I think you look at the price, maybe seeing Foligno go for a first and Taylor Hall go for less than that was surprising. We can get into Taylor Hall later, but Kyle Dubas, this is the Leafs' chance, Huss. I mean, they haven't got out of the first round. They're in this North Division where they're the best team. They're in first. They're going to play against Montreal in the first round, most likely. This is their chance. You get into the semifinal. Who knows what could happen if you have Jack Campbell continuing to stand on his head and win games. You have Foligno. It gives you some of that toughness. He can, shores up some of the depth on their middle six lines. So they're saying AI. This is our shot, the Leafs, and I think that's what they should. That's what they got to do. And they've played well against the Jets this year, and so we'll see if maybe those teams would match up in the second round. I mean, hopefully if you're a Jets fan, but I think good for them. But it's expensive. But hey, you want to go and you got to give it a shot here, and that seems to be what the cost was.
Mike Chapman with a great comment in the chat on the YouTube page on the Iafallo signing. Iafallo signing is big for guys like Kopp. I mean, if Iafallo's getting 4x4 right now, we know. I mean, Andrew Kopp is having a career year. He's going to have plenty of opportunity to show how valuable he can be come playoff time. I'm still wondering how the market will be for the middle class of free agents, which I think Kopp would sort of be in that group. But I got to tell you, that is a good sign that there will be money. And, I know it's a flat cap, but I guess, younger players under team control have to be a priority for NHL general managers to get signed. So that's another story we'll sort of be following, not as much today, but going forward. Remo, what did you make of the David Savard haul for Columbus? I got to give Jarmo Kekalainen a lot of credit. I mean, he's added 2 first-round picks and some prospects through that deal. And we knew that David Savard was probably the number one guy on the list. And, he got a pretty nice ransom, including, a first rounder plus a couple fourths to make the deal happen.
Yeah, I think Columbus has to be one of the winners, getting a first round for Foligno and a first round for Savard. You thought coming in, Ekholm would be the guy to get a first round. Savard would maybe be a second or 2 seconds. But, Columbus, they're having a real tough season. But they got to be, if we're handing out GM award at the end of the day, I don't know if we're going to or not. But Jarmo Kekalainen, I'm pretty happy for them. I mean, it's been a rough year. But having 2 first-round picks, I know there's a lot of uncertainty, but a first-round pick is a first-round pick. So I think it's well done for them. And David Savard, I mean, that was maybe a bit too expensive for 12 games of Savard for the Jets. And we'll kind of wait and see as we go to figure out what they're going to do.
Yeah, so Savard got the first-round picks that have been traded so far. Nick Foligno, David Savard, and then the Islanders' Devils trade last week for Paul Mary. And as you mentioned, Reem, Taylor Hall did not garner the Buffalo Sabres a first-round pick. And it does seem surprising considering his track record, what he's done in the league. But, man, the stench of what's happened in Buffalo is real. And I'll tell you what, the fact that this is now his 4th team in 2 years, he hasn't really been part of any success whatsoever, fair or not. That's part of the Taylor Hall story. But from his perspective, what an opportunity he gets going to Boston to play for the Bruins, getting a fresh start on a team where he won't be the guy, but he'll have an opportunity to fit in and contribute and maybe resuscitate his value before he's got to sign a new contract.
Yeah, and he had a no-trade clause, so he could pretty much say where he was going, where he was not. And it seems like of the teams where he was going, he wanted to go to Boston. He mentioned in his press conference today that he wanted to sign there in the offseason, but it didn't really work out. They get him for a second-round pick in Anders Bjork. Even EA Sports, the video game, was dunking on the Sabres, making a joke that the Bruins' trade difficulty has been set to easy. So, but I know people in like Edmonton were talking about Taylor Hall, but he doesn't want to go to Edmonton. He had full say. So if the teams you want to go to don't want to pay up, that's what it is. That's a pretty rough deal for the Sabres. When they signed him in the offseason, they thought, okay, we'll pay him for $7 million. We'll trade him for a first-round pick if it doesn't work out. You don't even get that. You're going to get a very low second, most likely. That's got to be a big L for the Sabres in a year of just complete L's. And if you're Jack Eichel now, what are you thinking being there? And you said to me before we started, if you're Anders Bjork, finding out you get traded to the Sabres, that's got to be a gut punch.
Yeah, when you're the guy going the other way in a big acquisition for an exciting playoff team, and you end up going to the cellar, not always good. So we're going to get to Murat in just a second. In the meantime, if you can just stay on top of the feed. By the way, everyone in chat, give a shout out, give a like for Michael Remis putting together the first ever Winnipeg Sports Talk trade ticker. We've really arrived when we can put on this sort of a program with a ticker involving trades. I couldn't be more impressed.
I'm monitoring all the trades, all the moves. I just added Alex Fallow, that deal to that. So this is awesome. We're here. We're going to be here. We're watching the TV. They're tap dancing since we don't have any trades. But yeah, we'll have the latest news on the ticker. If there's some breaking tweets, we can bring those up. So if you do like anything here, you're having fun hanging out, make sure you hit the like button. If you're watching on the replay, leave a comment. All that helps us rank higher in the YouTube stuff. So awesome to see everyone here in chat. I see Troy in there. Shout out to Troy. Shout out to Joe from Winnipeg. Max of Sound says, I smell like cabbage. Not quite, but I appreciate that as well.
I don't know how that would come out in a YouTube program, but I guess we're learning new things all the time. Great crowd right now. We're going to get to Murat. Murat Mondays here, always very popular. And you can tell by the amount of people that are here, waiting to see what happens before 2 p.m. Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily, as always, brought to you by Not Auto Corp. Why not get into the car of your dreams at a great price with the help of the Not team? We'll also help you consign your present vehicle. Find out more, Waverly and McGillivray, or online at not.ca, including the city's biggest selection of Tesla electric vehicles. And, of course, our friends at Boston Pizza. Any Boston Pizza tonight, you got the game day deal with the spicy pierogi pizza, the meteor pizza, the 24-pack of wings, or go for the pizza flights and call your shot with Boston Pizza in Molson. Your chance to win instant BP gift cards, a custom-made outdoor rink for next summer, or a VIP NHL experience with any pizza flights purchase or Molson. Eat in, take out, or delivery. All right, as we continue to monitor the ticker as we get closer to the top of the hour, let's welcome in our good friend from The Athletic, Murat, to get the latest on the Winnipeg Jets as we get into the deadline. Murat, what's good? How are you doing, my friend?
Living large. I like the thematically appropriate whiteout just outside the window over here. Other than that, I mean, life is good. This is a big day that has not really been that busy yet. How about you guys?
Yeah, no, it's been fun. As we were talking before, there was some pretty significant moves and some of the bigger names taken off the board over the course of the weekend. And to your point about the whiteout outside, I always thought the trade deadline day was one of those great days that if you could cut out of work or you just not go in, the weekend, take the Monday off. And I imagine a lot of people made the impromptu decision to do that when they looked outside. But hey, it's hockey weather, and there's still a lot of hockey to be played for the Winnipeg Jets, Murat. Hey, just before we get to the trade situation, pretty impressive win for the Jets, shutting out the Habs on Saturday night. Connor Hellebuck getting the goose egg and the first star of the week in the National Hockey League. Nice week for Winnipeg.
Yeah, absolutely. A huge week. There were moments against Montreal that you didn't like, but in that game, I mean, after the initial rough patch was gone, they started pouring it on. Everything went Winnipeg's way. And I think just if you're the Jets right now, trying to figure out where you stand in all of this. I know Paul Maurice says he doesn't standings watch. That's not going to be a topic for them. But there's a clear-cut 4 playoff teams in the North Division right now, right? You have Toronto, you have Edmonton, you have Winnipeg, you have Montreal. And there's got to be a sense that Winnipeg wants to believe they can take on any and all comers. And I think if you run the table against Montreal in that kind of fashion that you did, especially coming off that 5-0 shutout, the belief has got to be building. I think it really is for the Jets right now.
Now, before we get, and again, we'll be waiting over the course of the next 45 minutes plus the overflow to find out exactly what Kevin Cheveldayoff did. There have been some moves in the division so far. Let's start with Kyle Dubas. A couple pretty aggressive moves over the course of the weekend, including going to Columbus and getting Nick Foligno. What do you think of the Leafs right now as opposed to what they were like on Friday?
Well, I think that what they've done is they've recognized, just like Winnipeg may, that there's a path to the Final Four through Canada right now. And it's not just perhaps about that for Toronto, but even about taking the next step after that. If you're the Maple Leafs, you have that diverse, dominant, skill-heavy forward group. I mean, Austin Matthews is scoring at just a ridiculous clip. And then you go on, we don't need to name all of the names. They're that good up front. Paul Maurice has said they're the most consistently good team at generating opportunities from the middle of the ice. But if you look at their playoff track record, the various chokes and whatever else you would call it that's happened in Toronto, they're probably looking at themselves thinking more about the truculence, to use a Brian Burkeism. I think Nick Foligno will do that. He's a great leader, a good human being. That's going to address that. Even Riley Nash is kind of an annoying player to play against, a guy that can give you a couple of different looks aside from the skill. Addressing their backup goaltending with David Riddick. These aren't massive deals, but they're tinkering around the edges of a good team. And I think it's because they think that that's the flavor that's missing to take them over to the next step.
What did you make of the return for Foligno and then Taylor Hall a little later on?
I shake my head. I don't understand these things sometimes. I mean, you've got Taylor Hall at, I think, 50% cap hit, which I think is $4 million in his case, going to a contender, a team that should be one in Boston. And it's just, I think Remis just said that, was it the stink in Buffalo that continues to hang over things? And I think that must be what it is. The guy still drives, and I'm talking about Taylor Hall, he still drives chances at just an incredible level. He's a first-line talent when it comes to what he creates scoring chance-wise. Guy's shooting percentage dives, his teammate shooting percent dive, and you can look at that, and you don't need to be an analytics obsessor or even a video obsessor to look at Buffalo and know that things over there are really horrible this year. So I think Boston's going to get a very good version of a very good player for cheaper than Nick Foligno. And I think that that's just a sign. I mean, I don't fully understand it, but it's a sign that the attitude, the playoff track record, this idea Foligno had that upset over Tampa Bay for Columbus. There's this dispositional element. Teams are willing to pay a premium when they believe that guy at his heart and soul is going to be a difference maker in that unique way.
Hey, just before we get to the Winnipeg Jets, what if you thought about the prices paid by these teams to get around the cap essentially and double up on 50% retention. We sort of have seen a market established over the last few days.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, like before this year, and I know it's happened in the past a little bit, we always talked about these teams with cap space that might be able to weaponize it a little bit, grab a pick for something, be a middleman, so to speak, to make that trade happen. Now we almost have the prices set, right? You know, a third round pick buys you 50% or fourth round pick. And it's interesting, especially if you want to analyze these sorts of things, that we've never really been able to quantify these things before, because our interpretation of what a player is worth when he gets traded for a second or a third or whatever it is, that's subjective. But an actual dollar amount, this is something to watch, and this is interesting to see if there's any GMs who overvalue, undervalue. I mean, this is data to build and to really compare.
Murat of The Athletic with us as we count down to the trade deadline in the National Hockey League coming up at the top of the hour for those of you joining us live on YouTube. Murat, I will say this. I know we're getting down to the final hour. I can't say that I'm surprised that we still haven't seen a big move by the Winnipeg Jets. I thought patience, especially from what it seemed like we were kind of going through a big week-long staring contest by a number of GMs. And it kind of seems like the selling GMs have waited their counterparts out and got some pretty significant deals done right now. That being said, we're less than an hour away from the gun. What do you make of the Jets situation having not done anything? How urgent is it for them to make a move, and do you think that they will?
Well, we've talked about Toronto, but they're not the only team to make a move in the North Division. Nothing has been an absolute grand slam home run trade in Canada yet. But there's a sign that everybody else is tinkering to sort of push their teams above to the next level, get ready for those playoffs. Winnipeg hasn't done it yet, and I feel very confident that they were able to use Savard. But I don't feel confident that they thought he was going to be the one player to really be a seismic shift in terms of their metrics, in terms of their performance. And they're also at a different place in their window than you might imagine Tampa Bay to be, who acquired him, right? Winnipeg is a good team. Forwards are great. Goaltending is great. They're on the cusp of being one of those competitive playoff teams, but they're not on that defending cup champion cap exploits throughout the roster, Kucherov on LTIR, all these sorts of things. So the kinds of prices that they're willing to pay for that player, like a Savard, would be less than a Tampa Bay in this sort of situation. And I think that's right. I think that's wise. Next year, it'll be a little different. We can get into next year when we get there. I think that Winnipeg is going to make a move, and whether that's something a little bit more minor but useful in terms of a Jamie Oleksiak, moving Derek Forbert to that bottom pair, adding a lot of left side depth. That's possible. I don't think Josh Manson is incredibly realistic. I don't think there's a home run, Jacob Trouba replacement for Morrissey's chemistry's sake or what have you on that top pair. I think it's a tinkering year. I think they will add somebody. It will help their playoff chances, but this is not that all-in grand slam trade the first and Heinola year for the Winnipeg Jets, and it really shouldn't be.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. And as much as I was excited about the prospect of potentially David Savard coming to Winnipeg, when I saw what the cost was for it, I kind of said, I'm glad that they didn't move that much capital to get him. That being said, I still do think there's certainly a need. Is Oleksiak the best option right now for the Jets, as we mentioned? Certainly we're hearing that in the chat. You look at the list, guys that we've seen play a lot, and certainly we've seen a lot of Oleksiak in the Central Division over the last few seasons.
Well, I like him. I like him a lot for a couple of reasons. The acquisition price would not be incredible. His cap hit is easily fittable, even before Nathan Beaulieu moved to LTIR today. I mean, I think it's 2.1 and change in terms of cap hit. And also, he's a player that's had results in a third pairing role for a long time. And the question was, when he bumps up against top competition in a top four situation, can he continue to be Jamie Oleksiak in a successful way? And I think that's what he's shown this year. So I think that for Winnipeg, if that's a player that they come away with, what's going to happen, or what could happen, is that he would take Derek Forbert's spot alongside Neil Pionk. They would continue to be matchup ready, those tough minutes that that Neil Pionk's always going to get. And I love Derek Forbert's start to the year. I think he's been a great find for the Jets. I just don't think that he's kept up that excellence. And I think that a little bit of upgrade there, a little bit of depth in terms of that sort of combination would be a good thing for the Winnipeg Jets. I also think it's worth noting, and this is blue sky talk right here. I mean, Winnipeg moves Nathan Beaulieu to LTIR today. We knew that was coming. We talked about it in the past. This is a way to gain more cap space. That moves the Jets up to about 4.7 mil in terms of LTIR relief, assuming Vesalainen's not on the roster. That's a solid amount. Like, Winnipeg is not cap hamstrung. You could trade, a first and a second for Josh Manson if that's the price, and the cap isn't necessarily an issue. It also makes some of these dark horse targets like an Alex Goligoski, who's at 5 point something, attainable as long as you're willing to waive Sami Niku, send Logan Stanley to the taxi squad, whatever it is. They're so close to being able to afford just about anybody in terms of a cap hit sort of situation. So Oleksiak does strike me as a modest front runner depending on Dallas's injury situation, but there could be some surprises and maybe some overpriced but very quality veterans available too.
Murat, talking with some folks on the weekend, the fans love Logan Stanley. His stock continually seems to be rising. If the Jets add a defenseman, and I realize depending on what side of the ice, let's just assume that it's an ambidextrous defenseman that can play either side. I realize that's not necessarily realistic. Is Stanley the first guy to come out, or is it Tucker Poolman? Is there other options right now? I mean, that's a hard decision, because I think that while they do want to improve the defense, I think you can look at the guys that are in the lineup have been making the most of their opportunities, especially on that bottom pair.
Yeah, that is a great question. And I think the default is to assume that the rookie comes out. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, track record in Winnipeg is play the veterans. Two, I mean, he is waivers exempt. You can move him to the taxi squad and fit a little bit more cap space in terms of who you're acquiring at the trade deadline, if that is what happens. So by default, that's the most likely one. But he's also so unique, right? That size, that stand up for your teammates mentality. He's had success, and a tremendous amount of success as well, on that third pairing. The argument that says that he should go is that, well, they haven't really put him up against top four matchups. If you're a metrics person and you're comparing him to a DeMello, a Morrissey, a Pionk, everyone else has played at least a few games in a top pair or top four sort of situation in terms of their matchups. Logan Stanley still sheltered, still hasn't. So they are protecting him a little bit. Would they protect him so much to move him out of the lineup? Possible. But then we've seen this happen in the past. What if it's Dylan DeMello who comes out, who's a player I love? I think he should be playing on the top pair with Josh Morrissey. I love that duo. Not a big guy, got pushed around in the playoffs last year, certainly playing third pairing minutes. It could be because he's an excellent mentor. It could be because the Jets don't value him as much as a Tucker Poolman who is playing those top pairing minutes. I don't know, Hus. I think it should be, don't galaxy brain it, move the rookie out, appreciate that you got the win. He came out of nowhere and look how good he is, but it might go a different way.
Murat, nothing on the Jets right now, but we do have the latest two trades coming in, both out of the Western Division. First of all, the Vegas Golden Knights get Matthias Janmark, who was number one on Frank's TSN trade bait list going into this morning. Janmark and a 5th round pick for a 2nd rounder this year and a 2022 3rd rounder. And then their division rivals, the Colorado Avalanche, get Carl Soderberg back in the mix for 2 younger players, Ryder Rolston and Josh Dickinson. Interesting arms race between those two clubs who, listen, great season so far from Minnesota, but I think most people imagine the road to the Final Four being a 2nd round matchup between Colorado and Vegas, and not surprising, both of those teams tinkering today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've seen, especially from Vegas over the years, just an absolute lack of hesitance to make a deal when the time comes. I mean, they outbid everybody for Mark Stone. They've made some major moves. They've been a cap conduit for teams. They got in Winnipeg's way a couple of times as well. I mean, when push comes to shove, Vegas is willing to go all in, and they're a quality team top to bottom. That makes complete sense. Colorado, same thing. I mean, they've been so good. The McKinnon-Rantanen combination has been fleshed out with that defense that Joe Sakic has been able to build. Cale Makar, Sam Girard, and more Devon Taves. I mean, they've got a good thing going, an incredibly good thing going in Colorado. I think I read metrics-wise that they're up there with the best teams in terms of expected goals and other sorts of things among contenders ever in terms of having all of this stuff matched. So it's nice to see that old-fashioned arms race. I like that stuff. I absolutely love it. So then I turn my attention to, okay, Toronto's added, Vancouver. I'm not sure what their movement plans are. Edmonton's added. There are things happening in the North Division at all. And, Winnipeg doesn't seem to be pulled into that same sort of competition. Is that because they don't yet believe that they could make it that far and then overcome that team? Is it just a price issue? Is it, as I believe, the real window probably is next year when you have Hanel and Sandberg and other things coming in? I don't know. I just love this stuff. I love seeing these questions and answers. One team moves, the other one feels like it's got to step up.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Hanel and Sandberg because, listen, if everyone's healthy as currently constructed, I mean, they're not in the top 6, obviously. They're not even on the team right now. But I have been saying, we've seen this so many times before, Murat, where, at a certain point, your situation, your roster looks one way, and then you advance 2 months and everything is different. I mean, Logan Stanley's a perfect example. I mean, he has sort of changed that whole conversation right now about him. But if there aren't any specific additions, does it tell you that maybe the organization feels that, they have guys that they can add to the lineup from within that might be sooner than some other people maybe believe?
Well, that's a compelling one to me. I looked at this season going in as a tread water, wait for Hanela and Sandberg sort of situation. I thought Hanela would assert himself and that the coaching staff would insert him into the lineup on a regular basis. I thought that was a little bit more likely because he'd had so much success in pro in Finland for 2 years, really. I mean, that's a pro player, pro ready, and I think he's excelled for the Moose as well. Sandberg, I was a little bit more hesitant. I thought that this could be a year where we see AHL time, and I wrote to that effect many times. At this stage, I don't know. I love to hear when Kevin Cheveldayoff says, hey, we've got a lot of young guys in the system as well that could be our own additions, and he has said that earlier in the season. I don't think that Paul Maurice and Charlie Huddy are going to look at their existing top 6 and bring somebody like that in at this stage. I don't think that they're trusting the playoffs to even to use a BS word, rookies than say Logan Stanley is at this point because he's been worked in with them. I don't think they're the cavalry for right now, but I think that they're a really compelling reason by next year is probably going to be a little bit better, assuming Winnipeg's able to return some quality forwards.
I will say this, though. I mean, those players would be, I think for all intents and purposes, insurance policies for the hockey club, but much like Logan Stanley getting an opportunity due to injury, it is usually more often than not injuries that give these guys an opportunity to get their foot in the door. And we've seen a number of times your timing of that chance makes a big difference because if you go into the lineup and you exceed expectations and play very well and the team's winning, you got a chance of staying in the lineup too. So I don't completely rule those guys off. I think a number of things would have to happen for one of them to get in. But I will say this, with the time of year we're talking about, if a player we weren't maybe expecting to be in prime time gets that opportunity and shines in it, there might be a chance to stick around a little longer than maybe most people expect.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, their quality, it's good to know that quality exists. I rate Hanela already very highly, and I think that he would be ready for that sort of situation. I'm sure there'd be big major questions about whether he could handle the muscle of a first round playoff matchup if opportunities arose for him. That's an interesting one. But I think back in Winnipeg, how many players came into the league exactly the way that you're talking about? And, Jansen Harkins gets his opportunity in the playoffs last year. Jansen Harkins back into the lineup now with Blake Wheeler's injury because the fourth line, bottom 6 seems to be set in Paul Maurice's mind when healthy. Go back to 2017. I think it's November when Kyle Connor comes up. I think Matthew Perreault is the player that was hurt, or maybe it was late October, but 2017, Kyle Connor via injury seizes the opportunity, moves to the top line. That's the best case version of that sort of scenario. So I really think that, I read online sometimes too, injuries make these great decisions sometimes, but it's because Winnipeg's so patient, sometimes to their detriment, sometimes to their benefit, I think, in terms of valuing these young guys and waiting for them to be overripe or ready to seize that job and never really look back.
Very nice comment in the chat. Murat is an awesome guest on the show. I'm going to go subscribe to The Athletic right now just to read his stuff. Seriously. I don't know why you hadn't already done it, but yes, get over there and subscribe to The Athletic and read what Murat's doing. You had some great pieces, looking at options for the Winnipeg Jets coming in. A name that I've seen in the chat a couple times, another big guy on the blue line, is Nikita Zadorov. Thoughts on him and how he might fit with the Winnipeg Jets if they were to make a swing for him?
Wow. First of all, thank you to whoever said that. Welcome aboard. Get in there. Get on. As for Zadorov, I talked to Scott Powers in Chicago about him today, and I also gave Ryan Clark a call because he used to cover the Colorado Avalanche for The Athletic as well. I am just so fascinated by the player type. It's an old school, run out of his way, make the big hit. We saw that in Winnipeg. He blew Mark Scheifele up a few years back. It led to a bit of a brawl situation. This is a throwback player, a massive, physical, good moving player as well in terms of how he moves on the ice. So he certainly looks the part of that kind of player that can step in, clear some certain key areas of the ice with a little bit of extra violence, which Winnipeg has been missing. So I think stylistically the Jets like that. I don't know that his impact is so amazing that he's a real tide turner for the Jets. Just in terms of shot metrics, he seems to be where scoring chances go to die on both ends of the rink. He's been good defensively. He's played a top four role. He's done that to a really solid level, I think, in the places that he's been. But at the same time, he's not that puck mover who's going to fix the breakout. He's not that guy that's going to be creating chances on the other end. I'd be fascinated to watch it just because of how he moves and how he hits. I don't know that it automatically upgrades the team in a big way.
Well, based on what you just said, as far as metrics and some of the things that you pay very close attention to, one of the guys that intrigued me actually was Mike Riley in Ottawa, and he went for a third-round pick to Boston, has only a $1.5 million salary. He's obviously off the board. But of the players that somewhat, are rumored to be out there on those trade bait boards, is there one guy from an analytic perspective that maybe stands out as a great value or a great fit more than others?
Well, yeah, I liked Mike Riley for that reason as well. But I mean, as a small guy, he sort of doesn't have and as a guy who creates a lot, but also will make mistakes that stand out in people's memories. I mean, people's impressions of his value go down. And I think that's what's happening to Vincent Dunn in St. Louis as well. There's a guy who in a third pairing role has just been excellent for St. Louis over the years. He can move the puck really well. He can jump into the play. His metrics in terms of what he contributes, to offense are excellent. I mean, this is a player that St. Louis should keep in the fold or should warrant a lot of attention around the league, in my opinion. But because he's a little bit undersized, because he has had mixed results in the top four as he adjusts to that transition, the question mark is, can he do what he's known for doing in a massive, upgrade to his role? Like Winnipeg would kind of need him to play. So I don't think he's on the Jets' radar necessarily. I don't think the Jets called about Mike Riley either. But these are players who I think would have tremendous value in the right situations.
Now, it's funny because there is a game tonight. And, of course, players did speak. And I'm just seeing DQ Nix in the chat and said, do you guys think the team wants Chevy to make a move? Probably depends on who you're talking to. Because, if you're a guy that might get squeezed out of the lineup, maybe like, let's stay the course. If you're Blake Wheeler, who really wants to give himself the best chance to win this year, you probably do. I know you were on the call. We heard from Dylan DeMello this morning. What do you make of the situation around the players over the course of these couple hours until they finally get the all clear?
Well, I mean, it's so funny that it was Dylan DeMello who was being made to speak to the quality of Winnipeg's defense, because what's it like for them as a human being to hear about how awful you are all season long, right? I mean, forwards are great. Hellebuck is great. Defense needs work. And yet you keep winning. So I have criticism for the Jets defense. I believe if they had a surefire top four right-handed defenseman with Josh Morrissey, that would be great. I believe if you could bring in Alexiak and bump Forbert down, that would be great. That's a contending defense right there. But at the same time, they won. They're human beings. They're not going to feel like, they're all of a sudden bad players because they've had a tremendous run of success. And Connor Hellebuck has bailed them out for sure. That's how it's going. So to answer the question, hey, all of the criticism is that you guys can't move the puck, you guys can't be physical. It's a good question. It's an important question. I'm glad it was asked. And then you have Dylan DeMello sort of sticking his elbows out and saying, hey, you guys aren't paying attention. Neil Pionk throws hits. We've been a defense by committee team. We can move the puck when we need to. It was protective, I thought. I thought he was protecting his guys in a way. And I like that stubbornness.
Absolutely. And that's what you would expect, especially from, albeit a newer Jet, a veteran of that blue line, and a guy that, as you mentioned, is, has been playing third pairing at time, has been doing other things, probably capable of being in other situations, but at least in the eyes of the coach, they've put things together to give themselves the best chance to keep their heads above water and win games, and that's exactly what they've been doing. Speaking of winning games, we do have a game tonight. You'd have to imagine these guys will be going for their pregame naps and hoping that, the phone doesn't ring, and then you get up, sort of clear your head, and go right back to business trying to continue a pretty nice run of play as of late.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I don't know what a trade deadline feels like to a player, but if anyone felt safe, I feel like this one for the Jets would, because I can't imagine a situation where they're moving bodies out. I mean, in terms of cap space, they don't need a safety valve in terms of moving somebody, I don't think, because of that roughly 4.7 mil of LTIR and a little bit of flexibility in a couple other spots. So I feel like they can sleep easy in that sort of regard. I feel like they can prepare for Ottawa the way that they intend. But at the same time, somebody might have to go the other way to make the dollars work. And at the same time, I suspect, and you mentioned Blake Wheeler. I mean, here's a guy running out of years, back nine of his career, is still a good player. He's got to look at this and be like, if somebody, important came, and Alex Goligoski, who I know they've golfed with a couple times in the summer, they've got a relationship, they went to the same university, they have a track record. If Alex Goligoski arrives and all of a sudden that first power play unit is humming and there's a little bit more veteran presence, I think that's, I don't know if it's going to bed on the night before Christmas like a kid. I don't think it's that big, but it's got to have some emotion to it.
No doubt about it. And hey, just speaking of Blake Wheeler, a great sign today downtown at the rink. Obviously, the captain not with the club in the nation's capital today, but on the ice, getting back to work. And, as we said, as long as this wasn't, a serious concussion that kept him out for a while, a refreshed and rested Blake Wheeler, really for the first time in his career, going down the stretch into the playoffs, probably not a bad result of what was obviously a scary incident for Winnipeg.
Yeah, I guess in terms of the muscles and in terms of the heart and lungs, that's a little bit of load management on Wheeler, just because he plays in every possible opportunity and has done for forever, really. I mean, just an incredible Ironman streak, and, sat out once, I think, at the end of 2017-18. And other than that, I mean, he missed a game when traded once. He's got a tremendous track record. He's also stubborn, and there's no way he was going to come out of the lineup for a week just because, for the sake of load management. So hopefully everything's going well in terms of his recovery. That's what Paul Maurice said today. Skating on back-to-back days is great. Maurice seems to eye Saturday night as a possible return if all goes well, and he liked that because there were 3 off days after, so you might be able to see how he is, back him off, and make sure everything's okay. Seems like a good theory, but I'll speak to you from experience. Brains, concussions, recovery, they work in mysterious ways. It's not always a straight line. It's a tremendous sign that he looks like he's progressing. That's great. Bonus for the playoffs, absolutely. Hopefully it keeps going in the same direction. That's all I say.
Yeah, no, I mean, the same way. And I hesitate to say, well, hey, a couple of weeks off would be great for the captain. If it was a sprained ankle or something like that, that you're going to get the rest, but you never know what's involved with anything that's classified as a concussion. So we do need to keep that, at top of mind. Murat, this has been so much fun. I know you've got a very busy day following what is to come potentially over the course of the next half hour or so, and then a game tonight. Fill people in on what you've got coming up and when it'll be up at the Athletic.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is obviously a big day, and even though we've got 15 minutes left here, and I still expect to hear something. And if we don't hear about a Jets trade, I mean, there's going to have to be some investigation and some reading as well. I really do think that something will happen in these next little while or in the overflow. So full investigation, full analysis, responses to the trade, that'll be up at the Athletic today. And then as the days go by, I mean, if that is a substantial player, it'd be worth digging into some video. I had a ton of fun watching 15 games worth of Pierre-Luc Dubois earlier this season to give Jets fans a preview of the little different things that he can do, in advance of his arrival for Winnipeg as well. So whatever it is, we're going to respond in a big way, and that's at theathletic.com. Join whoever that was earlier in the chat. Got to get your subscription in.
No, buddy, keep up the fantastic work. Jet fans appreciate it. We appreciate it. And we especially appreciate you taking time on a very busy trade deadline day to come and hang out with us. It's been a great show. We're putting up record numbers today. So we thank you very much for doing that, Murat. We always love having you on the show.
That's massive. Thanks for having me. Fun always.
Great stuff. There's Murat of The Athletic. You can follow him on Twitter at WPG Murat. And of course, Murat will be covering the team's game tonight, but also all the aftermath of whatever does or doesn't happen over the course of the next 30, 45 minutes or so. And of course, we'll be with you live here in Winnipeg Sports Talk right through until then. So we're going to talk with Rewucki, and it'll be fun having Brandon on just to sort of react to everything that we're getting going forth over the next little bit. I see DQ Nick hanging out with us in the chat. Perfect time to shout out the Nick and Nikki DQ group, DQ Niverville, Polo Park, St. Anne's, and the flagship store at DQ Northgate. Incredible sponsors of ours, great partners. I know everyone got fired up about the Blizzard win last week for the Jets. And again, if you've had any of their cakes, you got a special occasion, pop by Nick and Nikki. Hit them up on Instagram if you want, and they'll get you hooked up. Man, those things are good. And of course, Royal Sports at 750 Pembina Highway got a great tweet from somebody on the weekend. I believe it was Scott that said, great, love the suggestion about Royal Sports. I went in there and pretty much took care of everything I needed for the entire summer. A bike, some skates, soccer equipment, a baseball bat. They had it all, and obviously thanked us and Winnipeg Sports Talk for directing their way. If you have any needs when it comes to spring equipment, sporting gear, or just great clothes to wear, pop by Royal Sports. Tell them the boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. All right, let's get Rewucki in here, and hopefully Remis too, and we can I'll get a quick update because we are getting quite close to the deadline. I see Grant McCagg reporting that apparently the Habs, they had read Eric Goodbranson, but apparently it's Gustafsson, so we'll tell you on top of that right now. But let's welcome in Brandon Rewucki, our good friend, and oh my God, listen, I knew this was going to be a big show. And now, were you just outside checking on the weather and your hair got blown that way, or is that the actual shape that the lid is taking place on most days now, B?
No, I woke up like this, like the kids say, right, Huss? No, this is just a quick. It honestly takes me like 5 seconds to do my hair. It's just like one quick wipe through with the hand, and then however it's holding up, that's what we're going with for the day.
It's great to see you, pal. How you been?
Yeah, good to see you too, man. I've been good. Just pretty much at home with the little one this last little bit and enjoying. I mean, it really is crazy. I didn't realize this, but there is basically a dozen games left in the regular season. Like, it really has flown by, and it's going to get even crazier this next little bit. So crazy times, man. All
right, well, we've got a trade, it looks like. I'm just getting this from Pierre LeBrun. This is an interesting one. I've been doing some radio in Calgary, so I've been spending a lot of time talking with the Flames guys as of late, and to me, Sam Bennett was maybe the most intriguing piece that Brad Treliving had going into the deadline. Still an RFA, still relatively young, the highest drafted player in Flames history. He is on his way to the Florida Panthers, Brandon, for a second-round pick plus a prospect. Taylor Hall got a second-round pick, essentially. What do you make of, first of all, Bennett going to Florida, a team that realizes that they've got a pretty good opportunity, in the division that they're in, a very tough neighborhood of the NHL?
Yeah, I mean, we could spend 45 minutes on Buffalo only getting a second-round pick for Taylor Hall. Realistically, I mean, that's a different train wreck. But that's some nice work by Brad Treliving there, because I know Sam Bennett still carries that high price tag of being, a top, third overall, second overall a couple years ago, fourth overall, right? So top 5 pick. But, outside of a couple playoff runs, he really hasn't done a whole lot for Calgary, especially during the regular season. So I love the move for the Flames there. You're able to cash in on that, although I'm sure Calgary would have loved to have had him as a top 6 guy for the last couple years, as opposed to, hey, we did good work getting him for a second round pick. But I don't mind the move at all by the Flames there. And I mean, there's just not a lot out there, it seems like, right, Huss? So if you're the Panthers, you're going on a playoff run, you think hopefully maybe you can squeeze a little bit out of them besides Barkov, Huberdeau. I don't know what they plan on doing with them, but again, for Calgary, crazy that they're sellers at this point, but I don't mind the return that they were able to get for Sam Bennett.
Yeah, when I think of Bennett, I think of a player that has been at times extremely underachieving in regular season. But then I think about playoff hockey and when he raises his level of play, and man, we saw it in the bubble last year. I mean, for my money, Sam Bennett was a major pain in the ass for the Winnipeg Jets, and especially once they go down a couple players. I mean, I think he really felt like they were playing with a much different level of confidence, and he in particular was a real difference maker. Of course, that wasn't the case under Jeff Ward. He was a regularly healthy scratch at the first part of the season. Daryl Sutter came in, and he seemed to be one of those guys that got a nice bump. And from an organizational standpoint, maybe it just sort of bumped up his value enough that it made sense for the Calgary Flames to trade him. And again, you're getting back a prospect and a second-round pick. So it does take something off the table as far as protection of assets when it becomes to the expansion draft. The expansion draft's been a funny thing in the background of all of these deals made today, Brandon.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't really get that. Like, I get everyone's losing a player, but doesn't this feel a whole lot like right after the Vegas one happened and everybody clowned on, funny enough, Florida and some of these other Minnesota for giving up, multiple picks and 2 players to protect one guy. Everybody's like, well, at least GMs learned their lesson for the next time. No, they haven't, because it sounds like the same thing might be happening all over again. And I know people have brought that up with Winnipeg, for example, where, there's some skepticism or hesitation about acquiring a guy with term maybe on the back end because you might end up losing somebody you didn't want to. To me, I just kind of push that away. And when the expansion draft happens, you deal with it, you lose a guy, and you move on. Because realistically, that's the 8th, 9th most valuable asset in your organization. And if you're a good team, you should be able to weather that loss.
Another deal in the National Hockey League, a blockbuster involving your Philadelphia Flyers.
Oh, God.
Eric Gustafsson's on his way to Montreal for a 7th rounder in 2022. What are the Habs getting in Gustafsson? Is that like an 8th defenseman?
What a return.
Yeah, exactly.
They got a 7th.
You got a 7th rounder.
Look, he's an NHL player. He's one of the best hockey players on the planet. I don't know if I've ever seen a defenseman make as many horrific mistakes in his own end as Eric Gustafsson has. So, hey, it's a 7th round pick for an NHL body. I guess it's right. Like, it's not going to hurt Montreal in terms of giving up a ton of assets, but he is something else. I mean, he's just a guy you can't trust in your own end. Pretty good on the power play, but that's about it. Like, some of the things he did with the puck, you would honestly shake your head and just like, what? You're clearly talented. Like, what is going on? And it's just wild. He had that one season in Chicago, right, where he had like almost 60 points. And watching him play this year, it's just he's not even close to that guy. I mean, the Flyers defense, as we all know, has been a train wreck this season, right? So for him to be 8th on the depth chart in Philly, I guess if I could sum it all up in 10 seconds, that pretty much does it right there, that he's taxi squad material on one of the worst blue lines in hockey right now.
Hanging out, getting ready for the buzzer at the top of the hour for the NHL trade deadline. Andrew Paterson with you, Michael Remis back at the control center, and of course our good friend Brandon Rewucki hanging on. A former Jet was on the move, and it was rumored that maybe even Dmitry Kulikov could end up here in Winnipeg, but Cooley's on his way to Edmonton for a 4th rounder. What do you think of that pickup for Ken Holland?
Not bad. He's, and I thought one of the underrated storylines last year, honestly, was that Kulikov was pretty good with Neil Pionk most of the season, right? Like, I don't know why it didn't get talked about a whole lot. And that was during the, it seemed like 35-15 shot clock against the Winnipeg Jets a bunch of nights. And some of his underlying numbers were pretty good beside Neil Pionk. So, hey, give Kulikov a ton of credit. He's kind of revitalized his career a little bit. So I don't mind that move at all by Edmonton. No,
the Kulikov situation was funny because I thought he played his best hockey as a Jet in, sort of the second half of last season. And, he'd had injury problems. And of course he came with a big free agent contract, which immediately changes everyone's, paradigm about this player. You're making $4 million. You should be, and granted, this is legit. If you want to, you want to get the best bang for your buck, you want guys that you're spending big money producing that way. That wasn't always the case, but he was a serviceable defender. And, the fact that he was moved for a 4th-round pick. It's interesting about what the market is for a player like Dmitry Kulikov, but it really would make sense that is what the Jets are doing. And, as we haven't heard anything and we're getting closer and closer to 2 o'clock, I'd have to think that Kevin Cheveldayoff has been on the phone with a number of different general managers, kind of waiting some of these guys out, knowing that, he's not swinging for the fences for David Savard, but looking to add another player or two. And sometimes it's just a big staring contest, and I think we're all waiting to see who wins that contest.
Yeah, I think we're both on the same page here. But it sounded like when Chevy spoke with James Duthie earlier today that he's like, "Look, I'm more than game to trade the 1st-round pick, but there's nothing out there right now. Like there's just nothing out there on the blue line to necessitate giving that up, or at least teams are." The Manson thing in Anaheim and maybe some of these other guys with term, they're just not really looking to move them right now. So it sounds like Chevy's ready to go, but nobody's willing to bite for him. So sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, when I look at the trade bait list, there's not a guy on that list that I think, oh, definitely trade your 1st-round pick for that guy.
100%. I don't even know. I mean, hey, I love Jamie Alexiak. He'd be a great pickup. I don't know what kind of return Dallas is asking for him. I mean, maybe that's a 2nd or 3rd round pick, something in that realm. Chevy has no problem giving up picks if he thinks he's going to help the team in a playoff run. But it just seems like it's one of those rare years where there's nothing out there right now that could really provide that big impact piece that could come in at the trade deadline outside the organization, at least. I mean, there's the chance maybe give that Ville Heinola kid an opportunity down there with the Moose. Maybe that could be the big deadline acquisition for the team to give him a legitimate shot in the top 6.
Well, the funny thing about it is, and I was just talking about this with Murat, I mean, I don't think that this is the plan at all, but we've seen over and over again, and Stanley's a perfect example of a guy that got an opportunity because of injury, went in and just played so well that, he completely changed, I think, the organization's thinking about his readiness. And then Bolio gets hurt, he comes in and really doesn't look back. If the Jets don't add defensemen, there will be attrition if you go far in the playoffs. I mean, the funny thing is the guys that could be coming, that could be in those extra spots, could very well be these talented young defensemen with the Manitoba Moose.
Yeah, and look, I don't think Heinola would have the impact like we saw with Cale Makar a couple seasons ago, where he comes into the Avs lineup and he's their best defenseman right off the bat. But maybe like a level below that, you know what I mean? He looked really good beside Josh Morrissey earlier this season, albeit a super limited sample size. But I just think the world of the kid, and I would love. Hey, hopefully it's not because of injury, but I would love to see him just get a legitimate shot for 2 weeks, get 2 weeks worth of games, and you just never know. You never know, and it used to be a couple years ago that people were getting used to the fact that 19, 20, 21-year-old forwards could come right in and make an impact for a team. And now it seems like that works for defensemen too, right? Like if the kid's ready, he's ready to go and throw him in there. And so that's it's probably one of those, break in case of emergency options for the Winnipeg Jets. But I also don't think it would be the worst thing in the world to give Ville Heinola a legitimate shot. And I think you make a great point where, Logan Stanley would be with the Moose right now, but he got a chance and doesn't look like he's coming out of the lineup anytime soon.
Brandon Rewucki hanging out with us on NHL Trade Deadline Day here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. We are coming up to about 2 minutes to the deadline. It's still been crickets in Jetland, and I didn't expect it any other way, to be honest, Brandon. Considering the market and what I think is going on between GMs right now that really are basically playing a game of chicken right down till the end of the wire. Especially when you see, what has happened so far. And let me just ask you this. Thoughts on the value of a first-round pick this season as opposed to a normal year without the ability to scout any of these players and so many draft-eligible prospects playing almost no games?
Yeah, it was the perfect year to trade one, honestly. It's too bad that when Chevy is willing to make a move, involving a first-round pick, that there's just nobody available for it. So that does suck. And I think it's a huge difference, right? How many games has the average junior star played this season? Right? We're talking 20 to 30-ish. So I don't envy scouts whatsoever. It's a difficult thing at the best of times. And this is one of those situations too. And, if the Jets end up keeping that first round pick, the prudent move to me is, just trade back to the second round, pick up a couple extra flyers on top of it, and kind of play the lottery game, right? Take a couple stabs at it instead of just one stab in the top 30. So that's definitely unfortunate for the Jets. We'll see if Chevy goes that route, but that's something that I thought teams would be much more aggressive in doing, kind of throwing first-round picks all over the place, because it's pretty clear it can't have the same amount of value that it would have in a normal year.
Well, it's last call for trades for the 2021 National Hockey League season. It looks like we are up at the deadline. And now, Brandon, for the next 15, 20, 30 minutes, we'll sit around, talk, and wait for the late deals to come across the board. And, it will be very intriguing to see how many things actually get done right now, and, what the prices paid right at the buzzer will compare to some of the more significant deals we've seen over the course of the weekend.
Yeah, just want to give a big shout out to Apple, by the way, because I love extension cords that are 2 feet in length. I love being as close to my wall as possible. So thanks, Apple. Nailed that one. Yeah, I don't really know what to expect, man. I mean, we see like the trade bait board right now it's littered with a couple of Red Wings, and even then, like a fourth line, like Luke Glendening, fourth line, Jonathan Bernier, as a backup goalie. I don't know how much value that's going to grab in, right? Like there's not a lot of intrigue. And I was kind of hoping we would see a surprise team like an Anaheim or a St. Louis maybe sell off a couple pieces that we didn't really expect to see. But it just
Brian Getzlaf. Getzlaf's name I had heard from talking to some people over the course of the weekend that could potentially be a guy on the move. And, for a team that, like a Tampa, a Vegas, a veteran team that has a legitimate chance to win a cup, if you're putting Ryan Getzlaf into your bottom 6, would be interesting. We still haven't heard his name yet, but Getzlaf was a guy I was looking at. And of course, Mike Hoffman too. I mean, Hoffman's a guy that could probably help some power plays. He hasn't had a great season in St. Louis. Lots to prove as he goes into free agency again in the offseason. That is a name I'll be interested to see if we hear anything about over the course of the next 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, it's funny because you're almost at this point more concerned with what Toronto, Edmonton, Montreal do as opposed to what Winnipeg's going to do. And Hoffman is a name that I think might be a sneaky pickup for the Edmonton Oilers, right? A guy, I mean, they've been trying to grab extra scoring wingers for a long time right now. So the Oilers I know they don't have a ton of cap space. They made the Kulikov move, but they can find a way to make it work. I think Mike Hoffman could be a sneaky addition for the Oilers.
Yeah, well, we'll see if they can get it done, because they are in a much worse cap position than just about everybody else, certainly in the division. They literally need to take money in and money out. And, you're really like, if you're forcing a team to take James Neal off your hand because you're bringing in a $4 or $5 million player, that's definitely going to come with a significant premium on it, because nobody wants those contracts going forward into the offseason.
Kind of wild that Milan Lucic ended up being the better player in that trade, right? Everyone thought James Neal's the real deal's gonna find a way to turn it around. And Luch has been a pretty good. He might be the Flames. I don't want to say best player, but in terms of expectations, he might be like up there in terms of the most impressive Calgary Flames this season.
Brandon, let me ask you this. I'm just kind of paying attention to the chat here, and there are a few Jet fans that are hot, like atomically hot, that nothing has happened so far. If no trades happen, how do you what would your takeaways be from this? Is it confidence that they can get it done internally? Is it just the prices didn't make sense? Or is it that they don't believe this team can really be a contender come playoff time, even if they get out of this division?
Could it be a little of all three, perhaps?
It could.
Yeah, I mean, I think we know Chevy and Maurice. They think pretty highly of the team. I don't know if they would put them, up there with the Tampas and the Colorados. And while I might not agree with it, they probably think, hey, we're not too far in the group behind them. But it's just tricky right now, right? Like you can't just go out and make a move to make a move. You know what I mean? Like this organization does have reinforcements in case of injury, right? Up front, Jansen Harkins, I think, as he's shown over the past couple games, is more than capable of stepping in. And there's a couple other guys. Maybe Vesalainen could get a shot if there's some injuries as well. And on the back end, this is why, I mean, I don't mind if you look and there's depth defensemen coming in for other teams. Are they going to be better than Ville Heinola? You know, are they going to be better than Dylan Sandberg? Wouldn't you rather almost have those young kids get a shot at it and maybe they could surprise and be more impactful than some other team's third pairing defenseman? So I'm not going to look at it as the end of the world if Chevy doesn't make a move. Can they get out of the first round without making a move? Maybe, but I don't think they can beat Toronto without making at least somewhat of an impact move on the back end.
Well, certainly you talked about picking up the depth defenseman. There's one. The Ducks have just traded Ben Hutton to those Toronto Maple Leafs for a mid-round pick. Pretty clear. Yeah, pretty clear. Kyle Dubas knows full well his situation in Toronto. Yeah. It is this year or else. And now listen, maybe not winning the cup, but they've got to win a round. They are expected
They might have to win two.
I was about to say they are expected to win two. Now, Winnipeg and Edmonton and Montreal will have something to say about that. But you look at all of the maneuvering that Dubas has done over the course of the last few days. Will Ben Hutton ever even play in their top six? Maybe not. But if you want to win the cup, those are the sort of guys that you sort of need to have on hand because – you know, GMs will tell you, you want to go the 2 months in the Stanley Cup playoffs, you need 9, 10, maybe more NHL caliber defensemen because you might need to play them all at some point.
Yeah, I love what Kyle Dubas has done. And I honestly, I've loved what he's done pretty much his whole tenure there. But it's pretty clear that the last 2 playoff exits, they knew something had to change in terms of how their team was built, right? They've added a couple defensively conscious forwards now and Riley Nash and Nick Foligno. And Nick Foligno is an outstanding addition as well. I know a first-round pick might be a bit high, but he's a hell of a player still. And I think he can actually contribute a lot more offensively now that he's out of the black hole in Torts' Columbus. and even the Dave Rittich move, that's a sneaky good one, right? Because you don't know. I mean, Campbell's been kind of injured. Who knows what's going on with Freddie? So at least you get some insurance there. And
they don't want to be Colorado. Colorado beat last year. All of a sudden, you're facing elimination. And no disrespect to Michael Hutchinson, but that's not the way you draw it up at the start of the year to have Hutch in net. And, you know, with the uncertainty about Freddie Anderson, the history of Jack Campbell, I think it was prudent for them to make some sort of a move. And Big Save Dave as a third goaltender probably fits the bill pretty well.
Yeah, I like it. And I think, their moves at the very least, to me, puts them as the clear front runners, the clear favorites to come out of the North. I mean, the Jets could beat them in a series still, but there's no doubt that if they end up meeting, say, in the second round, Toronto is going to be pretty heavily favored. And like we touched on there, losing to the Jets in the second round is probably not going to be good enough for the Maple Leafs to, hold off any significant changes coming in.
Hey, as you can see on the screen right now, Kelly Moore over at OB reporting that the Jets have added a depth defenseman waiting for details. So, and I think that's sort of as the day proceeded, Brandon, that's pretty much what we were expecting. No sort of blockbuster, but if they could add another player that, could play in the top 6 or be there if reinforcements are needed, that was sort of the fit. The minute that players like Ekholm seemed to not be available, and of course David Savard got moved for the cost that he had, I think we sort of realized that maybe it was a bit of a pivot amongst Chevy and some of the other GMs that were looking for some of the better defensemen on the market.
Yeah, we'll see who it is. Hopefully, I know a third or a fourth round pick isn't a lot to give up, but I wouldn't be a huge fan of tossing a decent pick for somebody that might only be here for 20 games and it might not even play all that much either. So we'll see who the guy is coming in here. But I'm intrigued. I'm just intrigued to see how this last couple of games goes, to be honest. And there's not a lot of time here, not a lot of runway for the Winnipeg Jets. And I look specifically at the back end here to try to figure out, if they're going to shake up their pairings. Morrissey DeMello hasn't been given a look in quite some time, right? And that's really the main thing on Winnipeg that needs to be sorted out, right? Is who's going to be playing with Josh Morrissey on that quote-unquote top pair heading into the postseason, and can they find that guy? Clearly, Kevin Cheveldayoff couldn't find a guy in the trade market, or else I think he definitely would have made the move. But it does give the team options in the offseason, right? You'll have your first-round pick by the sounds of it. might be a little bit easier to grab an elite guy, before the draft, before free agency, and have that in lineup ready for next year.
So the Leafs gave up a 5th rounder for Ben Hutton from Anaheim and another late breaking deal. Eric Goodbranson from the Ottawa Senators is on his way to Nashville. And it's amazing how things can change in a couple weeks, in that, we were talking about Matthias Ekholm being available because the Predators were having this miserable season and they weren't going anywhere. And then they rattle off 9 of 10, keep on winning. And all of a sudden they're adding defensemen trying to get into the mix. And Goodbranson is an interesting one. I believe his cap hit was $4 million. I believe he's a pending UFA. Another one of those depth defensemen that you can, hold your nose and pay that freight for the remainder of the regular season because, of course, once you get to the playoffs, there's no cap. You might need them, and you're more than willing to give up a 7th round pick to add that to your lineup.
Nashville is interesting because we don't know what the divisions are going to be like next year, but it could be, right back to normal, Jets and Preds in the Central. I wonder if that, maybe played a bit of a role in being a bit hesitant to move Ekholm, for example, to Winnipeg. If I'm a Jet fan, though, I love Nashville being buyers. I don't really get the direction that they're trying to go in here. And I mean, maybe you'll disagree, but if you sneak in as the 4 seed there, hey, great, you made the playoffs. You can't have fans, though, or a lot of fans in the building, so you're not making a bunch of playoff revenue. And then what? You're going to last 3-4 games against Tampa Bay or Carolina?
3 out in 3 in a best of 7.
Yeah, I just don't get it. To me, it was the perfect time to maybe reset and reload your organization. So I don't love what Nashville's doing in terms of a direction there. But we'll see. Maybe that changes ahead of the expansion draft, and they might still move Ekholm or even Ryan Ellis. I know Philadelphia has been hot and heavy for Ryan Ellis for a while, so I guess we'll see.
Frank Cervelli reporting that the Leafs have traded Barabanov to San Jose for Antti Suomela. Have to admit, not familiar with Antti Suomela. Didn't see much of Barabanov. Another one of those minor shuffling of the deck chairs deals, as you will, that often we get a flurry of right around now every year.
The Alex Barabanov. The era's over in Toronto. Yeah. I mean, I could try and lie and tell you I know anything about him, but I think he came over from the KHL. But sometimes those sneaky little moves, you never know that guy gets into a game. I think of Kivi Ranta last year in Dallas. I didn't know he was a player, and then he comes in and basically takes the Dallas Stars to the Stanley Cup final.
Oh, we've had the Remis has had to step in as moderator in the chat. We have a 300-second suspension for Tommy Hightops for reporting fake trades in the chat. Remis, can you give us an update?
Thanks for having me in here. Yeah, there's a lot. The chat's buzzing right now. We got like 600 people. This is wild. So everyone in chat, thank you. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. But we've had some people in here, speculating on trades or reporting fake trades, and we can't have that. So look, he'd been warned once. I had to put him in timeout after the second time. Once people say like, "Hey, is this actually happening?" I'm like, "Yeah, you gotta get teed up." And here, I didn't do
Tommy timeout is what he is now.
I didn't do the official buzzer, but the trade deadline is over, so we can fire this thing off. I've been waiting to fire it off for a Jets trade, but we haven't had one yet, so might as well do the Bud Light goal horn here.
Hey, whenever we get the details, regardless of how minor a trade it is, when the names are announced, the goal horn will have to come back, Remis. Yeah. We're very, very well prepared. We didn't even have to get into any hockey card breaks or anything, Brandon. We've actually been able to
I was disappointed.
Yeah, I know. Well, hey, listen, we still got time if we want to have some fun. But it actually has been an incredible show. Maybe our biggest one since the launch of the entire station with Murat in here and pushing 600 people right now. And obviously, Remis, there is a lot of anticipation because we've seen the reports that the Jets have done something, but this is just the waiting. The deals cannot be completed anymore. They're in, but even though a day where nothing happened for so long, the queue always gets lined up right around 3 p.m. Eastern, apparently.
Yeah, and I remember a couple years ago, I jokingly said in chat, like, where's Bogdan Kiselevich? I remember the Jets added him a couple years ago after, and I don't think he ended up playing a game for the team, but he was one of the ads. There's always stuff trickling in. So I know there's a lot of people in chat, getting fired up about the Jets not doing anything. Wait till it's like confirmed that they haven't done anything before you're having any emotion one way or another. Let's settle down a bit. I for the record, I think they should definitely add a D. Ray Ferraro was saying on the broadcast, look, they need some extra bodies in there. He was saying of how, when Forbort got hurt, they really didn't have anyone to replace him. And I think that's where they're. They need some extra help. So let's wait and see. Chevy, we know in the past, when they need help, he goes in and gets someone. So it seems like they got a depth D. I don't know what depth D means. It can mean whatever you want it to mean. But people are like, I think there's some pitchforks out in there, and just put them away. Like, don't get too ahead of yourselves. That's what I think.
You know what? Yeah, it's take a nice deep breath. We'll wait to find out all of the information. But while we're waiting, especially for the new people in here, do us a favor if you're in the YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you'll know when we're on every day, and hit the like as well. It certainly helps us out. But man, I knew that the trade deadline show would be big. It's always great when Murat's on. I knew Rewucki's hair would be good for maybe an extra 100 viewers, but it really has been amazing, Remis, seeing how the chat has grown and how many people have stuck with us throughout this hour with so much intrigue as to whether the Jets will look at all significantly different when the new player gets here.
Yeah, we got about 600 people in here, just over 200 likes. We've hit 3,600 YouTube subs. We just hit 1,000 Instagram follows. So all of our social medias in the description here. Follow us on all of them. We are waiting for some more deals to trickle in. So we will wait and see. I know a lot of people in chat are putting stuff in, but I don't really trust anything until I see it on an insider.
Not a lot of blue check marks in our YouTube chat right now.
Or wait until you see it on our ticker down below. I'm trying to update all the stuff onto that ticker.
All right, so LeBrun is reporting that Hayden Fleury, I know a bunch of people are reporting in the chat while they're reporting things that involve the Jets that we don't know. I can tell you Pierre LeBrun usually has a pretty good idea on things, and it's Carolina trading Hayden Fleury to Anaheim. And if that's the case, Pete, that's an interesting one in that, Fleury, goes to a deal. Anaheim's obviously thinking that maybe there's a future for Fleury in Anaheim. Yeah. This certainly isn't a deal made to salvage this season for the Ducks.
It means Manson's coming to Winnipeg. They got a spot open, right? Can we confirm that? No. Yeah, that's an intriguing one. I mean, Carolina has been a defensive factory for how many years now, right? So maybe Anaheim trying to get in on that. I'd love to see what the return's going to be for a guy that just hasn't really. I mean, Jake Bean is maybe, I guess, leapfrogged him in terms of the totem pole out there in Carolina. But if that's the big one, that's the big one around 2 p.m. We're digging for it, man. not the deadline I was hoping for, no doubt.
Well, let's see. How many deals do we even have today right now? Because I did see that CoolBet had an over-under of 16.5 deals completed today. I guess Jeff Carter technically was the first one. We haven't talked about that one. We'll do that in a second. Cadet, Cooley, Lightning, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so they're going to need another 5 or 6 to hit the over if that happens. But, we haven't touched on the Jeff Carter trade. That was the first one kind of this morning, done late last night. He's on his way to Pittsburgh. Interesting move by Pittsburgh, who has had some success in picking up experienced guys with the playoff success in the past. Brandon, what do you think about Carter going over from LA for a 3rd and a 4th?
Yeah, Benedict Hextall making the move, grabbing an ex-Flyer to come over there in Pittsburgh. This has been the season from hell for Philly, so the only way this ends is Jeff Carter actually hitting the net this time in the Stanley Cup final, and the Penguins are probably going to end up winning the Stanley Cup. I don't mind the move. I think he's got another year left after this, if I'm not mistaken. But it does sound like from certain things I've heard that he's going to call it quits after this year. So this might end up being one of those cap recapture penalty things that we see, potentially affect LA and even Columbus going back to that deal. So it's an all right move. I don't know how much he has left in the tank, to be honest, but Pittsburgh's kind of made a living out of this in the past, right? They grab a guy that maybe looks like he's, teeing up on the 18th hole, and they're able to basically squeeze a little bit of value out of them.
Just seeing Billick reporting that the Stars are done. So the Jamie Oleksiak option seems to be off the board or off the books, which then, essentially, we're just sitting here crossing guys off the list that are not the guy, and then maybe at some point through attrition alone, we'll figure out the trade before it's actually announced, Brandon.
And it's funny too, people upset that Chevy's not doing something, but then if he did something and the price is too high, well, what are you doing giving up a pick for that guy? He's not worth it, right? So it's one of those things. I wonder what the ask was on Jamie Alexiak, or if Dallas was really all that interested in potentially moving away from him, because he was insanely, surprisingly good for them, playing beside Heiskanen in their run to the Cup final in the bubble there. So I'm sure Dallas thinks that although they're behind it a little bit, and who knows if they can catch Nashville, they figure, hey, I mean, if he stays here and we get in, we can go toe to toe with anybody.
No doubt. Sitting here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily, waiting to get in the final word on any trade deals. It's been reported the Jets have added a depth defenseman. We have not yet heard who that is, so we'll get that for you. And I know there's a lot of takes in the chat. I'm not going to get suckered in. We'll wait to see who we get coming up. And here, this is interesting, and I'm not sure what the incident around this, whether this is something in the Twin Cities or in St. Louis. But Darren Dreger just 31 minutes ago reporting a strong chance the St. Louis, Minnesota game tonight is postponed in the aftermath of the police shooting. Of course, the Derek Chauvin trial is going on right now. So, that's not good. But unfortunately, we've dealt with, some pretty concerning stories like that for a while now. And, we'll get back to the trade, but hopefully everything, will go forward. And bottom line, hopefully everyone is hurt. So, Brandon, we're looking right now, waiting for final word on what may be on the way to Winnipeg in this depth spot. But I think it is safe to say that at least my takeaway from this is that while, here in the market and around, people have spent a lot of time talking about the Jets defense, I think that, I think they're believing in the direction that this group is, and also in the potential of some guys that haven't played yet that we've been talking about over the course of this show, if in fact they need to break the glass in case of emergency, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, in all reality, there really is only one big issue right now, although it is a big one, the biggest one, with the Jets defense. The second pair has been solid pretty much all year long. Stanley DeMello is an outstanding third pair. I mean, I know Stanley himself has been sheltered a decent amount, but still, I mean, Dylan DeMello is a third pair defenseman. I don't know if there's a better one in the NHL right now, but we all know what the problem is, right? And it's been that Josh Morrissey hasn't been at the level that he was back when Jacob Trouba was his partner, back when Dustin Byfuglien was his partner. And hey, to me, it was clear Chevy tried to find a guy that could slot in with him, whether it was a Savard or an Ekholm, whoever that may be, and it just didn't end up working out for them. So is the answer in the organization? I don't think it's Tucker Pullman. I think he's a good third pair guy. Is it Hanela Sandberg? I mean, question marks because they haven't played a ton this year, but that's the one thing that needs to be answered. And if it does, I mean, there's no reason with Hellebuck behind them that they couldn't go toe-to-toe with Toronto.
Well, we're finding out the defenseman that has been added to the Winnipeg Jets. You can see it on the screen there, Darren Dreger reporting. We don't know what the return is, what the cost was, but it's Jordie Benn traded to Winnipeg, staying in Canada from Vancouver, going in. I mean, this essentially... Jordie Benn seems like the definition of depth defenseman. I mean, not a guy that's going to slide in or probably play significant minutes in your top four, but if you need him, especially a big guy to clear out the front of the net for some of those difficult matchups in the playoffs, could be a guy that could fit the bill, and I don't think the cost will be too prohibitive.
No, I can't imagine that's a whole lot there. I mean, I might be wrong on this, but Jordie Benn to me kind of feels like the Mike Sillinger of defensemen. I just feel like he's been traded at every deadline for the past 5 or 6 years. Hey, look, if you wanted the Jets to make a move that moves the needle, this isn't it, clearly. I mean, I don't really have strong feelings one way or the other. He is what he is, right? He's going to be either the 7th or 8th defenseman for the Winnipeg Jets. But I guess, in case of injury, at least you know that if a couple guys go down, that you have somebody that's played some NHL games for you. But obviously not going to be the answer beside Josh Morrissey, right?
Yeah, cost not too significant. A 6th-round pick to the Vancouver Canucks, to Jordie Benn. So, I mean, this was the equivalent. Hey, what did you make of the 2 guys that got picked up off waivers today? Victor Mete going to Ottawa. I mean, a young guy had such a good rookie season. I'm not surprised at his age that one of the lower teams in the league jumped early. But then Dallas gets Sammy Vatanen out of Jersey.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Dallas's injury woes are like on the back end, or if they have any. Because to me, that just seemed like, okay, we're going to pick up a guy because we're moving out a guy, right? And so you basically, in that case, you move Alexiak and you're able to keep Sammy Vatanen. So that one was, I just didn't expect that, to be honest. I'm more shocked that Victor Mete wasn't traded. Like, you're telling me no team in the NHL was willing to give up any kind of draft pick for him? I find that really hard to believe, honestly. And even like I don't know what Winnipeg, if they were in out on it or not, but like a 5th round pick, you couldn't do that. You know what I mean? I was just shocked, and I'm not surprised whatsoever that basically the first team up grabbed him, because if you're the Senators here, I mean, you're playing with house money, right? Maybe he becomes a guy. If not, the worst case, you get a young, cheap NHL ready defenseman.
All right, so if you're just popping in right now to the chat, great to have you with us. We've had a very busy show today. Murat was on earlier. Brandon Rewucki's with us now. And so far, the lone acquisition we have learned is that Jordie Benn has been traded to the Winnipeg Jets for a 6th-round pick, a depth veteran defenseman add, 33 years old, left shot. It'll be really interesting. Where does he fit in? I mean, when Paul Maurice decides to stick him into the lineup, is he a guy that's going in on that 5-6 pairing? Or does he even bounce any of the guys that are in the top 6 right now, Brandon? Or is he a player that, when need be, they'll give an opportunity, but ride with the guys they have right now?
If you want to have fun with it, and maybe if you're working from home or whatever, you could play a little drinking game. And when Chevy and Maurice talk about Jordie Benn, take a shot every time they mention an old hockey cliche and see if you can last through the press conference, right? Like that's kind of what he is, right? He's the classic veteran depth defenseman, and they're going to say rugged and move him out from the front of the net. And
big
all that
man.
stuff.
He's a big man.
Good in the room, right? You could just go down the list, and he's probably going to check off every single one of them. I would imagine he's 7'8". Like I wouldn't take him. I wouldn't take Tucker Pullman out for Jordie Benn, for example, and same with Logan Stanley. So I mean, he might even be 8th on the depth chart, to be honest. And then maybe a Heinola or a Sandberg come in if there's a long-term injury. But yeah, unless a couple guys are getting out of the lineup, I don't know if we'll even see Jordie Benn in a Jets jersey this year.
All right. Hey, listen, we're gonna get Remis back in here in just a second. Of course, it is snowing outside. Shout out to Corey and the gang at Breezy Bend, who saw this weather coming and opened a few days early so everyone could get out on the course on the weekend. Certainly not golf weather right now for a few days, but we've had a great start to the season out at Breezy Bend. Find out more on Breezy Bend at breezybend.ca. And hey, Brandon, just before we get to, how about Hideki winning that green jacket yesterday?
Oh, Hideki. I love Hideki. I've been putting money on him for a major for I think a good 5 years now, and it finally paid off. I know you're a fan too. I don't know if you were thinking he was going to pull it off this year though.
No, honestly, I had backed off my consistent betting. It was Hideki and Tony for a long time, and they were both killing me for a long time. I had a great weekend because I had a big bet. The number one was Corey Connors to be low Canadian. And I mean, I thought there was great value at that. He had an unbelievable run, and the ace just puts it over the top. And my guy, Willie Zalatoris, the Z-Man gave us that tip. We were on him at top 10. I saw that. And then I actually sprinkled on him at 40-1 after round 1. And man, he was so close. For a guy that doesn't have a PGA Tour card, a pretty incredible run that he had.
Oh, I mean, I don't know what his Twitter followers were like before, but with him going back and forth with Adam Sandler, like the kid's a beauty, right? Like he is so easy to cheer for, even though he's only like 90 pounds soaking sweat. I'm a huge fan of Will Zalatoris, but I was pretty much from round 2 on, I was on Team Hideki, and everybody knew it with him, right? If he got the putter going for 4 days at a major, he's gonna win one, and so I'm super jacked, super happy for him.
Great stuff. Let's get Remis back in here and get the $3 up. Remo, do you want to bang the? Do you want to do the goal horn? Jordie Benn is on his way to Winnipeg.
Yeah, Jordie Benn's coming here. There it is. We got one. Yeah, we got one.
We got one.
I said I would fire this thing off if we got a trade. And Jordie Benn, sure. I mean, they need a body, depth defenseman. You get hurt. That's kind of a good one, Brandon. Mike Sillinger of D. He is on the move pretty much every year. It does seem like. So, I mean, if you don't want to pay a first round for David Savard and maybe Josh Manson or Ekholm weren't available, they figured, hey, stand pat. I know some people I've saw on Twitter were like, hey, we'll just bring in Ville Heinola. That's your deadline acquisition. Let's see what the kid can do, Ville the kid. And I kind of agree. I'd like to see what he can do too. He's played well. He was on the All-Star team at the World Juniors. He's with the Moose. And you mentioned Cale Makar coming in and being the Avs' best defenseman. Now, I don't think Heinola would be that right away, but he could definitely make an impact if given some ice time.
Makar showed up in Colorado, started his first game in the top 4, and they immediately went on a run and bounced the number 1 team in the West in the first playoffs. It was a pretty nice debut for Makar. Now, whether that can happen with others, I don't know. But I will say this about Jordie Benn, guys. This is only his 4th team now. I mean, he played 6 full years with the Dallas Stars, then got traded at the deadline, played the rest of that season and 2 more with Montreal. And his last year in Montreal, he had 5 goals and 22 points playing in 81 games. Just hasn't quite been there on Vancouver. And, this year, 31 games, a goal, 8 assists for 9 points. I mean, not terrible production from a guy that's coming over for a 6th-round pick. But again, make no mistake about it. This isn't a guy that's going to come up and probably be playing top-line minutes or anything. This is the definition of a pickup that, will help in case they need.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to look at it too strictly from the North Division, Edmonton, you'd give them the check mark in terms of maybe adding a bit more of an impact piece in Kulikov over Jordie Benn. And that's intriguing because it does look like that's going to be the first-round matchup, right? I mean, unless Toronto falls back or Montreal goes on a run here, it looks like it's Jets-Oilers in the first round. So, I mean, it's something to keep an eye on. No doubt about it. I mean, I still don't see him sneaking into the top 6. I mean, it feels like this is the way it's going to go for Winnipeg. We can all talk about Heinola and, is he going to be Makar? Is he going to be something a little bit less than that? But in all reality, unless there's an injury, it's really hard to imagine what the top 6 they have right now isn't what they head into the postseason with, right?
Guys, we do have one more opportunity to do we have a trade to announce. I think you're going to want to hear this. Winnipeg native Madison Bowie is on his way to the Vancouver Canucks, along with a 5th-round pick for a 4th-round pick to the Blackhawks. So kind of a weird, just like a move up of a round to get Bowie. Obviously, the Vancouver thinks that he can get an opportunity. I mean, he was a high pick, Brandon, and a guy that was now moved between a couple of organizations as a player that would not have been waiver exempt, and a couple of other teams still waiting to see whether he can kind of graduate to that consistent everyday NHL player.
Yeah, it hasn't worked out for him so far. At the very least, he won a Stanley Cup with Washington and Vegas. So I mean, if that's the highlight of your hockey career, you're probably doing something right. But it is a shame, and he's a super nice kid. We've spoken to him a number of times, but it just a combination of injuries and maybe just not getting consistent playing time early on in his career, at least with the Caps. Just unfortunate that he hasn't found some footing yet, but maybe it works in Vancouver. Doesn't look like it will at this point. The Canucks, hey man, I mean, you said the chat room is hot because the Jets aren't making moves. Could you imagine what it's like in Vancouver right now with just everything that's gone on there, the Pearson signing, and then what is Jim Benning doing? I know it's not earth-shattering or anything like that, but moving Adam Gaudette, I mean, talk about selling low, right? A guy that they expected to be their third-line center this year, and they're trading him for, at best, a depth piece in Chicago.
Yeah, listen, from Benning's perspective, it was just nice that he went and made a priority of locking up the core pieces like Tanner Pearson before moving on to players like Paterson or Quinn Hughes. Whoa! That is. Hit the buzzer. Hit the buzzer. It's not a Jets trade, but that actually is a legitimate, pretty interesting hockey trade.
Wow.
Oh, Remis, you're muted. You muted yourself again.
Oh God, guys, we were doing so well. We were doing so well, man.
Just about a fully clean trade deadline show. Just about.
But anyway, yeah, this is a good trade. I mean, NHL players, guys that we've heard of. Vrana's been in the top 6 for them. He's a goal scorer. But Anthony Mantha, he's been really disappointing in Detroit. And I guess Steve Eisern's made some moves there. Get some guys who can help him. Here, I was muted, so let me do this. I see everyone in chat. So there it is. They're real NHL players in a trade. So that's pretty good. And we were talking about Jim Benning. I was giving him a pass last year after the Canucks' success. I mean, we had roasted them. Like, what are they doing? Trading a first for JT Miller, signing who had Antoine Roussel and Jay Beagle to long-term deals. Those contracts are brutal. The Holtby contract is really bad. They have so many bad contracts at the bottom of their roster. It is not good for them.
Well, you can add the Tanner Pearson to that list as well. I think certainly if you talk to a lot of people. So that's an interesting one. Mantha going to the Caps and Vrana going the other way. And this is another late-breaking trade we have to announce. Brandon, your Philadelphia Flyers have traded Michael Raffle to the Capitals for a 5th-round pick. Your instant reaction to that deal?
Yeah, devastated. A core piece.
How fired are you up about that 5th-rounder?
You know, people in Philly, honestly, they don't care anymore. They just don't care. And I thought, you know, Chuck Fletcher is getting a lot of heat. So, you know, we're going from Vancouver, a team that everybody's all pissed off about, to Flyers fans right now. And people want change, and they're just kind of sick and tired of the same old song and dance in Philly over the last little bit. So, yeah, a 5th-rounder, yay, whippy, you did it, Chuck. Thanks. The team is basically the same as it was when they blew what was it? They gave up like 3 goals to the Sabres in the last 3 minutes of that game a couple days ago just to seal their playoff fate finally. But a lot of people want to change, and we'll see if the talk is true heading into the offseason here, if they're actually going to move somebody. But people are not going to be happy with this deadline for Chuck Fletcher.
All right, just for folks that are wondering what trade we were talking about when Remis had his excellent bit that was muted, it is the Red Wings trading Anthony Mantha to the Capitals for Richard Panik and Jacob Vrana. And, you know, certainly, Brandon, from the perspective, Vrana is, you know, a pretty talented young player. Certainly Steve Yzerman. I mean, they don't have a ton of assets. Anthony Mantha would be one of those and could be a guy that could absolutely help the Caps come playoff time. Steve Yzerman's playing the long game here, and he thinks Vrana has a nice potential to be a consistent top 6 player because God knows they need them in the Motor City.
Yeah, I'm shocked, man. I did not see that one coming. I mean, Vrana had a really good year last year. He was, I mean, just under a point a game, I think, for a large chunk of the season. He's a little bit below that pace right now with the Capitals. I mean, maybe the coaching change with Laviolette there. Maybe there just isn't a fit. Maybe they don't like what he's given them in Lavi's system this year. But Mantha's a guy that, you know, a couple of years ago, he had a real strong start to the season. And I think he broke his wrist and missed a bunch of time after that. But at the World Championships a few years ago, he was maybe Canada's best player, if you remember that run over in Europe. So, like, the dude's got all the potential in the world. Maybe finally getting an actual team to play with unlocks a little bit of that. I don't mind the deal for both sides, to be honest. I mean, Vrana versus Mantha, that might be a bit of a coin flip for me. And Detroit gets Richard Panik, another NHLer, for a team that desperately needs them. But I'm intrigued to see what Mantha can do in Washington. And maybe he flourishes playing beside a playmaker like a Backstrom or a Kuznetsov.
Now, let's just see back to the trade tracker. Anything else trickling in at the deadline? We'll see the Jordie Benn for the 6th-round pick. We knew that one. Oh, and they've just got the Mantha for Vrana and Richard Panik up as well. So I would imagine that that's probably close to it. You know, we're at about 20-3 right now, and most of these late deals that have come in. Hit us up in the chat, Jet fans. I know some people are really disappointed that the Jets didn't do more. Others are quite happy that they didn't trade premium assets for some of the players that were available. Let us know on that. Brandon, from your perspective, How should people be feeling now, knowing that, the team that got them to this point in the standings pretty much will be the team they go forward with, along with a depth add in a player like Jordie Benn?
Yeah, to quote The Simpsons, probably cromulent. Like I don't know. Like I'm shocked. I mean, you're looking at the chat. Are people like actually fired up? Like legitimately upset that nothing's been done?
There are a few
Yeah.
people. I mean, I think a number of people have sort of been understanding that, I don't think there's anyone. I mean, listen, if you can get, who was it? Michael Kempney that went from
Yeah.
the Hawks to the Capitals in that year and ended up playing top 4, and they ended up winning the cup, and he went over for a 6th round pick. I mean, everyone would love that. I mean, that's the best case scenario of a trade deadline acquisition. More often than not, though, you see teams paying significant prices for guys that, unfortunately, there's only one team that wins it all. This year was a fascinating trade market, and, there were a number of deals that got done, Brandon. I think even in spite of everything happening around the league, between the finances, the uncertainty of the picks, we still had a half-decent amount of action, but most of it was coming into today as opposed to today.
Yeah, and I was probably in the camp of either go big or go home. Right there. I mean, I think everyone loves the way the forward core is. I mean, a nice mix of talent and grit for the Jets right now. So I don't even know if you wanted to bring in anybody to disrupt that, right? I mean, maybe a depth piece, but I mentioned it earlier. I don't think that's a necessity for Winnipeg. So you leave the forwards alone. You leave the goaltending obviously alone. I don't know. I just thought there was that one spot beside Josh Morrissey, and if you weren't going to be able to fill it, then just step away. Like don't make a move just to make one. So I don't mind if you're just giving up, what was it, a 6th round pick for Jordie Benn?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's cool. I like don't make a panic move essentially. And Kevin Cheveldayoff obviously avoided that. I mean, if the guys aren't out there, there's not really a whole lot the GM can do, right?
One other thing that I think we'll hear from Cheveldayoff when he does speak at whatever point that is, likely this afternoon, is that I think we see what I know people are thinking that, well, they've got these guys in the American League, they're not using them. That doesn't mean they're not incredibly high on them. And they have a process for getting these young men ready for the National Hockey League. And that's what's happening right now. I think for any of the big fish, I mean, certainly the 1st round pick was something. There was additional picks that went forth. But I have a feeling that the biggest thing stopping Kevin Cheveldayoff from making one of those bigger trades was the fact that most other GMs were saying, oh, Chevy, we'd love to deal with you. Let's talk about Ville Heinola. Let's talk about Dylan Sandberg. Let's talk about Cole Perfetti. And they were politely told to beat it. And I'll go talk to Jim Benning about Jordie Benn for a 6th rounder.
Yeah, beat it or F off, right? Like something along those lines. And yeah, like, I mean, I was heavy on Matthias Ekholm for a while. But if the price was one of those three, it just doesn't make sense for the Jets to do that, even if they are in a win now mode, which, I mean, they pretty much are. So that's the problem with this, right? You can be upset that a move wasn't made, but if a move is made and you're giving up one of your top 3 prospects there, no one's going to be happy about that either.
All right, let's see some of these thoughts. We've got Dan Milburn. I'm happy we stayed the course. Name the last blockbuster to help their new team win a cup. The answer is none. But Split. People are saying this is a wasted year. The playoffs aren't done. This team, as is, can win Canada. Willie Q, I would have been happy with paying a 4th for Kulikov. And Taylor Renee, if this plays out right, the way we go could have a huge team next year. Sam Whitaker, Ben apparently had a no trade clause. A surprise he chose to come to Winnipeg. Well, wouldn't you if you were in Vancouver right now? I can't imagine, Brandon, that the atmosphere around the Canucks has been very fun in the entire season, but especially what they've been going through over the last little while. I'm sure he just wants to get back to a team that's got a chance to play some hockey in the spring.
Yeah, I'm shocked he had a no trade clause to begin with. That's news to me, but I could totally understand wanting to get away from the situation. I mean, it's a pretty obvious move for him to say, I'll come to Winnipeg and take a run at the Stanley Cup. I mean, hey, I think it was Dan you mentioned there said they can win the North still. I think that's true. I wouldn't put them as the favorite and maybe a little bit below Edmonton. But I think they could still beat both of those teams. Could they then beat 2 more after that? No, I don't think so. But was there a move out there for them to be made that could have allowed them to do that? I mean, with the prices you saw and the guys available, it's unfortunate, but that move wasn't out there for them. But I do imagine, I mean, let me know if you disagree. I'd be shocked if going into this offseason, if outside of those top 3 prospects, if basically everything else is on the table for Chevy to try and bring in an impact defenseman, whether it's at the draft, before the draft, or before free agent frenzy gets underway. I think Chevy's going to go all in and push every chip he can to bring in a couple big pieces.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree. I mean, I do think, and we've seen Cheveldayoff be aggressive when the time is right and the price makes sense. And I think that's part of the reason why it took so long to finally get the Dubois deal, because there was an element of patience and a bit of a staring contest, if you will. Here's a good one from MC Stuttering Buddha. Buddha says, JMO DeMello playing better lately. The Pionk Forbort pairing being steady, and Big Stan more than holding his own. I expect it gave Chevy just enough breathing room to say no to a stupid deal. I mean, the bottom line is, if you're going and making a deal like trading a couple 4th-rounders and a 1st-rounder for David Savard, you better make damn sure, Brandon, that you make some real noise in the playoffs, or in Tampa Bay's case, hold up that trophy again. Otherwise, it's a big risk without a lot of gain. Many people would have said that Tampa would have been fine even without adding a player like Dennis Savard. So there really is an element to, this is the window, you push all the chips in. And I don't think that Kevin Cheveldayoff was in a similar situation as a guy like Julien Brisebois in the Bay.
100%. Yeah, totally agree. And, I might have been one of the few in the city here that I wasn't a fan of giving up a 1st-round pick for David Savard. Is there something big coming on here?
Whoa, I'm just reading the further details on the Anthony Mantha trade. So Mantha goes to the Capitals, Jakob Vrana and Richard Panik, and a 1st-rounder this year and a 2022 next year. That's
two firsts?
A 1st-rounder and a 2nd-rounder in addition to the 2 players for Anthony Mantha.
Wow. I mean, you got to say that's Stevie Y being Stevie Y, right? That is a hell of a package to get. I mean, I thought, to me, still, Verana, Mantha's, I mean, to me, they were pretty close. I thought Verana and Panik was a good get for Mantha.
And Dylan King, a bit of an overplay for Mantha there, in my opinion. Would have thought either of those picks get it done, not both. And Taylor Renee, the Anthony trade is insane. And C-Mac says, Yzerman fleeced the Caps. Well, the Red Wings haven't been fleecing or beating anybody in anything for a while, so maybe it's nice for the guys in the Motor City to get a big win on trade deadline day, because there hasn't been many of them happening on the ice, Brandon.
Yeah, take the dubs while you can. This is one of the few they're going to get all year. But that's Stevie Y, right? And even in Tampa, like the Stevie Y GM tree, those guys know what they're doing. So I was shocked that Tampa Bay was able to pull Savard in, but it's really tough to imagine. And I get it's different because the playoff setup is going to change after the first 2 rounds, but Tampa, Colorado, to me, seem like they're in a class of their own right now, don't they? And if Tampa's getting Kucherov back, it's pretty close to Lightning versus the Field, the same way it was Tiger versus the Field back in the day.
Oh, Owen Catelli just scooped up Mantha in my fantasy league, LFG. Nice. Hey, you know what? That's shrewd GMing there, Remis, by our pal Ohad.
Yeah, you know who dropped him in that league a couple of weeks ago? Me. I couldn't go pick him up. I'm doing this right now. Owen. I'm battling with him for a playoff spot.
This is outstanding. Ohad, that is excellent GMing. You realize that the fellow GMs are done.
Yeah, I would say, that's a good question, though. From a fantasy perspective, Mantha's stock up, Taylor Hall's stock way up. Like, if you were holding on to Taylor Hall and his 2 goals, like praying, maybe he would get traded to a team, you have to be happy with the Bruins. Because, you probably spent a high pick on him, and he's 2 goals. Everyone's joking that he's going to score 2 goals against the Bruins tomorrow night. That's the #1 joke on Twitter last night. So,
hey, listen, I honestly might, if I know that he's in the lineup, I might be taking the hat trick prop, the over 2.5 goals. And he'll get more in one game against the Sabres than he did making $8 million for them over the course of 37 games. It sort of just seems like it has to happen. Here's an interesting. Anytime someone wants to drop hockey-related Ron in the chat, they're definitely getting a mention. Gary Madero says, if Pittsburgh could win a cup with Ron Hainsey on their top pairing, the Jets should be able to win 4 with the defense they have right now. We always remember hockey-related Ron and that incredible run with Pittsburgh that showed anything is possible. I mean, that
as long as you have Crosby Malkin, anything's possible.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? And people will look, hey, as long as you got Connor Hellebuck and you got Mark Scheifele and a few of those guys, you can maybe get past the defensive deficiencies. And hey, the Jets' record will tell you that that's the case, albeit maybe not a real recipe for success in the offseason. However, that Pittsburgh Cup champion team, Brandon, is always cited as a team that had elite talent, great goaltending, and very average defense on paper that put it all together and got the job done.
I mean, yeah, that's fair. That's fair, but they also steamrolled the opposition, basically the second half of the season on, right? Like they weren't doing the old Winnipeg lose the shot clock battle severely every night. We find a way to squeak through it. So, I mean, it's true. It's true. Ron Hainsey was a top pair defenseman on a cup winning team, but I do feel like people also failed to mention the most important fact, which is they had arguably 2 of the 3 best forwards of the last 20 years on that same team as well. Winnipeg does not have that same luxury.
That can help you win. That can help win.
When I look at the Jets, I know they're more talented, but I always think of that Sabres team that went to the Cup final against Dallas in 9. They had Dominic Hasek. He was far and away the best goalie. Now, look, obviously Hellebuck isn't Dominic Hasek, but he's the Vezina Trophy winner. He's shown he can win games on his own. And the Jets, they don't need this is the team they are, Brandon. They get outshot, every game. Not as much lately, but they get outshot. They can score on one chance with the talent that they have. And it seems like they're happy with what they got. I think you got to be disappointed they didn't get, the big name, but it seems like no one else. What are you playing a first round for David Savard? They lost out on that. Josh Manson's got the no move. And Ekholm was off the table. So who was around? They're sticking with what they got. They seem to be playing, I think since the last Toronto series like a month ago, they've played much better in terms of shot attempts. So you just have to get past Edmonton, Toronto, you'll see, and you hope Hellebuck can carry you. But I do think overall maybe slightly disappointing, but I don't it seems like there wasn't really much going on unless you wanted to severely overpay here.
Well, and that usually is the case of the predicament of general managers who want to add at the NHL trade deadline. Listen, I love what Yzerman did in that deal that we just heard. Is there another trade, Brandon, that you like more than the others that maybe stands out over the course of these last couple days and the weekend? Best acquisition?
Yeah, I mean, as far as what you're giving up, to me, the Taylor Hall trade is, I mean, I don't know if there's G grades given out in university and things like what's lower than an F. The Buffalo Sabres get an F minus. They are such.
Well, what were they supposed to do? Nobody wanted him for a first round pick. I mean, that is on Lou Lamoriello decided I want the guys from Jersey more than Taylor Hall. Kyle Dubas said we want Nick Foligno more than Taylor Hall. I mean, at a certain point, it gets great. I think Buffalo was more than willing to trade him. They obviously were. They traded him for a second. It just speaks to how terrible he's been this year and some of the baggage that Taylor Hall comes with that speaks to the price that Boston paid to get him, I think.
Yeah, but if they do that deal at at 2 p.m. today and that's all you get, then that's all you get, right? But why are you jumping the gun at midnight when you have another 16 hours to try and force save it as the Bruins into, we will give up a first round pick at this point, or maybe some other team becomes desperate, right? It's another example to me of why the Sabres are where they're at, where they're just not doing things effectively. And it is crazy though, that if you before the season were trying to figure out what would be the worst case scenario for Buffalo, nobody would have guessed that a second rounder and Anders Bjork for Taylor. That wouldn't have even been close to have been the cards.
One thing I think we're not talking about enough is he had a no trade clause, and he could have said, hey, trade me to Boston. That's the only place I'm going. Because he said today that he wanted to go with Boston. He signed there. So, I mean, I don't know what the situation was, but I think that's kind of being overlooked when you're talking about how bad this trade was.
Can you imagine if Taylor Hall? Can you imagine if Taylor Hall had the balls to go into Kevin Adams' office and say, I'll accept a trade to one of these three teams.
He has a no
Like,
trade
you
clause.
guys been stealing money for the entire season. He scored in the second shift
I would have
and then
leaked
had
that conversation immediately.
Oh, yeah, no, exactly.
He negotiated in a no trade. I mean, it's within his right to say, I'm only going to Boston. That's where I want to go. I mean, he knew the deal going in too. But yeah, I mean, that worked out horribly for everyone. That deal, like no one won. No, like him signing, and you thought they were getting basically signing a first round pick for $7 million. They couldn't even get that. So yeah, big L for the Sabres.
I think he's going to be great in Boston, though. I think that's a nice bit of work by Don Sweeney, where you're a second-round pick for a guy that, I mean, realistically should be at least a first-line forward, and you get a little bit of scoring depth behind that.
I think history has proven that Taylor Hall can definitely be a first-line forward, and if that's the case, your team's probably not very good, and you're going to lose a lot. Going to a place like Boston, I think, where he's not going to be that first line forward. You put him in a secondary position, better matchups. I mean, like this is actually a great spot for Hall to go in, because he won't be the guy that Arizona trade everything to get, and it's sort of all on his shoulders. And I have a feeling he'll probably flourish. And for his personal outlook going into free agency again this year, Brandon, this is probably a pretty great fit and a huge opportunity to actually play in the playoffs. Although watch Boston get bumped in the first round quick, and then it'll all be Taylor Hall's fault.
Do you think he re-signs in Buffalo next? No, yeah. I mean, he's playing for. It's funny because that run in Arizona, it's like, oh, he's trying to play for one last big money deal. Do you have any idea what he's going to make next year? Right? Like, there's a lot on the line for Taylor Hall if he wants any kind of long-term deal.
Well, that to me, it's the years are the most interested. And I think teams will be saying, you know what? Yeah, we'll give you 6. We can fit you in at 6.5 or whatever, but it's a 1-year deal or it's a 2-year deal. I mean, the thought of him going and getting, a 7 or 8 year extension, I kind of think that ship has sailed. And it's in this climate as well. I mean, teams, I think, are loath to do that unless they are really locking up their core franchise piece. And, with the exception of Arizona that made the aggressive move to get him, I don't know that there's another team right now that is actually in that would feel confident to commit to Taylor Hall for that much, but especially that long.
Yeah, and that's fair. I would have major buyer beware on anything Taylor Hall related. It is funny though, that's you mentioned the long-term deals to the big guys, but of course Philly signed Scott Lawton, essentially their third liner, to a 5-year deal. But that's intriguing because his stats and his numbers look very similar to Adam Lowry's this past season. Like, production-wise, they've been pretty much identical. So it's just something maybe to keep an eye out in terms of what Adam Lowry could command on potentially re-signing with Winnipeg. Might be something in and around that ballpark.
Oh, man. You know what? This has been such a fun show today, Brandon. Thanks so much for doing this. Reem, this has to be a record-breaking day for us on Winnipeg Sports. I've just been looking at the viewership numbers. They've been well over 500 for, at least the last hour, if not more. Cracked 6 as well. It's been great. And thanks to everyone for turning out. And if you are with us right now and you haven't already, please hit that red subscribe button and give us a like as well. We want to get those numbers up. It helps us out big time to keep on doing what we're doing here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Yeah, Remo, any final thoughts for you through trade deadline day, or any hot WrestleMania takes for the weekend that you might have been waiting to get out before the end of the show?
Yeah, I got the belt behind me, but I actually didn't really watch WrestleMania this year. It's too long. 2 days. Give me a good 3-hour show. I can't devote a whole weekend to WrestleMania, guys. This is the first year in a while I never tuned in. But as far as you want to go? You got a WrestleMania hot take?
Well, a couple things. First of all, in the Lock Shop wide world of wagering, my 3-match WrestleMania parlay did come in, as well as my Aussie Rules football pick, which was very nice, and the World Curling, so it was huge. But WrestleMania was the big one. Pretty wild main event yesterday with Roman Reigns not only beating Edge and Daniel Bryan and really sort of emasculating them at the same time. But the highlight of it was, are you familiar with Logan Paul?
Yes.
Logan Paul was a special guest of Sami Zayn in his match against Kevin Owens. And then Sammy lost, got mad at Logan Paul for sort of, trying to, raise Kevin Owens' arm afterwards. And then Kevin Owens gave Logan Paul the Stone Cold Stunner. And he sold it well. So that actually was a personal WrestleMania highlight for me. But some pretty great matches. Best one, I think, Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks. Main event. Nice to see the women main eventing the first night of WrestleMania.
Yeah, I saw that. So, that's pretty cool. A lot of people there I saw in Florida as well. But this was the first year I didn't tune in. I don't know. Usually I'm there for a bit, but it maybe didn't grab me. Maybe I'm just getting too old, and it's not like it used to be for me. Back in the
now
90s.
you're a guy with a zoo membership, and
Yeah.
you're doing that. Have you got the zoo membership
Brandon,
yet,
you're
Brandon?
gonna get
Apparently,
one.
that's part of the starter kit with as a young father.
Yeah, well, it took me 2 days to watch the latest episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I think is like 45 minutes long. So there's no chance in hell I'm going to get 2 days worth of WrestleMania in. But I'm down with this new membership. That's cool. I'm not too far from there.
Everyone's doing it, Brandon. You can't do anything else right now. So it's you get the dual package. What is it, like $120? That's like 3 visits for you and your wife. It'll pay for itself.
I'll look into it.
I tried to go this weekend. If anyone was there Saturday morning, you saw a kid screaming his way out of the zoo. That was me.
That's just a weekly story of how Evan loses it at the zoo, and yet they come back every week.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, for everyone that's with us right now, thanks to the support. This has been an amazing, amazing day for our program. Please hit that red subscribe button. We need to keep getting those numbers up. We want you to know when our shows are happening, which is 1 o'clock live Monday to Friday here on YouTube. And then afterwards on the podcast, whether you're Spotify, Apple Music, Stitcher, it's up. Just search Winnipeg Sports Talk and make sure to hit the subscribe button. And of course, pass on the word, spread the word, because certainly we've been growing, but we want to keep doing that. Have to thank Not Auto Court, Boston Pizza, Winnipeg, Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Royal Sports, Breezy Bend, Cool Bet. I will do the Cool Bet lines coming up on Twitter, so you can go to check out all of them. But just to mention, we should quickly take a look at the odds for the Jets and the Ottawa Senators. And geez, Remis, the Jets are finally favored in a game right now. Again, dogs in both of those games against Montreal, won them both. Shout out to everyone that had it. Jets minus 192, Ottawa plus 60 tonight. I'll hit up some of the best bets for tonight on Cool Bet at the Winnipeg Sports Talk Twitter feed. And tomorrow, check out the Lock Shop. We'll be doing that with Dustin Nielsen before we get going on the program. Wix, it's been so much fun having you on the program. You killed it. We're going to have to do this again very soon. And quick takeaways, no need to panic for the Winnipeg Jets. We know the team that we've got, and looking forward to seeing this game tonight and the run through to the postseason.
Yeah, hey, anytime. I'm more than happy to join you and Remo. So thanks for having me on again. Ultimate takeaway is just RELAX, right? Do the Aaron Rodgers here. There was just nothing out there. There was no impact guy, unfortunately, to be had. And by the sounds of it, unless you're giving up a Heinola, a Perfetti, or a Sandberg, which in my opinion is just completely out of the question. So the Jets are going to go into the playoffs with the team they have. And hey, is it going to come with a Stanley Cup? In my opinion, probably not. But it doesn't mean they can't end Edmonton and Toronto's season on the way out themselves. And I think there's going to be a big move to come this offseason. But in the meantime, just get ready for what I think is going to be an absolutely titanic tilt in round one between the Jets and McDavid and the Oilers.
Bring it on. Remo, final thoughts on a very busy trade deadline show here on WST?
Yeah, I agree with Brandon when he says relax. I see a lot of people getting real fired up in chat.
That's what the internet's for, man.
Yeah.
Hashtag mad online.
I guess so. I think you are kind of disappointed they didn't get the big guy, but it's not like someone else beat them and got Ekholm, or Manson didn't get traded either. The best one out there was David Savard for a first-round pick. And is David Savard like that?
And
that
2
great?
fourths.
And two. So I don't think it's worth what you're getting was worth the cost. So they got a depth guy in case someone gets hurt. Someone was asking, where does Ben step in? I don't think he goes in unless there's an injury, right, guys? Is that the plan here?
Is
Is he taking Poolman out or maybe Stanley?
Well,
I hope not.
People will go crazy if that happens. And I think, and in some ways, Brandon, I think the Jets might have kind of discovered that they had their own ad. It's a 6'7" monster that all of a sudden can play regular minutes in the NHL that they didn't think they had a few months ago.
Yeah, and you still got Heinola, the break in case of emergency, if you want to go that route as well. I would love to see Logan Stanley, take the training wheels off. He's been sheltered pretty heavily, and he's killed it in those minutes, but maybe let's up the responsibility a little bit, because I'd be very fascinated to see if he could handle it, because the first test he's gotten at the NHL level, everyone's been impressed by what he's done so far.
Oh, and the great thing about it is, they pretty much know they're going to be a playoff team. They'll have plenty of opportunity to do exactly that over the course of the final 15 games of the season. Brandon, thank you again for doing this. This was a great show today, and your attendance. Not only were people just fired up to see that wonderful quaff of yours again, but it was some amazing insight. And Remis, of course, we got to get these podcasts up, so we do have to cut it short. But another great day, and we'll look forward to kind of a full wrap of the entire trade deadline, as well as the Jets in Ottawa tomorrow night on the program.
Yeah, we have a game tonight. We haven't even talked about who's going to beat up Brady Tkachuk on the Jets. Who's going after him? Remember, he elbowed Blake Wheeler last week, who's out, and he did skate
First
this
shift,
morning.
Logan Stanley has a little word with Brady Tkachuk, I would imagine. That will be something that I think, it's not really a big thing the Jets do a lot of, but I would be shocked if that wasn't at least attempted to be addressed tonight when they
and it's in the
forward.
Tkachuk's nature to deny that request.
Oh, man. Great show. Brandon, thank you. Big thanks to Murat for joining us, and everyone that joined us today live on YouTube. Just unbelievable numbers. If you're with us on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button before you leave. Give us that thumbs up with the like. And if you're watching it on a mobile, just close the chat, and then you can do both subscribe and like it. That's going to do it for us. Great show. Thanks to everyone for being a part of it. Thanks to Not Auto Court, Breezy Bend, Nick and Nikki DQ, Boston Pizza Winnipeg, Coolbet Aikens Lake. We'll be back tomorrow, 1 o'clock, with the latest on the Winnipeg Jets and all the other fun stuff we're talking about here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Enjoy the game tonight, folks, and thanks for being with us.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.